Chapter 443. So, we'll walk back to Yuzhang City? Outside Changyang Mountain, Song Yifei pouted as he looked at the boundless forest. When they left the trial array, they realized that the eagle cat sword spirit, who was supposed to bring them along, had already left. Naturally, the hover bus they took to get here was gone as well. They were trapped on Changyang Mountain just like that. The cheapest single-person hover bus cost 50,000 hero coins. Guhan and Song Yifei were new sword-bearers, so how could they have 50,000 hero coins? As for Yi Wenjun, although he had been a sword-bearer for many years, he had spent almost all of his hero coins to maintain the heaven-shrouding family's expenses and his own cultivation. How could he have the money to buy a hover bus? It was very likely that Jiyu Luren had his own hover car, but unfortunately, he had left the trial array one step earlier than Jiyu Han. At this moment, Jiyu Luren was nowhere to be found. He had probably driven his own hover car and left. The sword-bearers from other cities had their own means of transportation, but they all had to return to their respective cities, so there was no possibility of passing by Yuzhang City on the way. So, it seemed that the only way Jiyu Han could go home was to walk back to the city. This was an impossible task. Not to mention the fact that they might encounter all kinds of powerful Yuan Ku along the way. Even if Guhan and the others had a smooth journey and did not encounter any enemies, it would take them at least half a year to get back on foot. When Guhan first left the trial formation, he was busy arranging for the Egyptian deity trio. When he returned to the temporary camp, he did not know that the eagle cat sword spirit had already left. At that time, there was only one hover bus left in the temporary camp. If he had known, he would have asked Liuyan Ling to borrow a transportation. Why don't we follow them to Yangjing City first? Once we reach Yangjing City, we'll think of a way to get back to Yuzhang City, Song Yifei suggested. At that time, the only hover bus that had not left was the one from Yangjing City. Once the people from Yangjing City left, Guhan would really be trapped in Changyang Mountain. That's the only way. Guhan smiled bitterly and nodded. Things were just so funny. He had just rejected Liuyan Ling's request to return to Yuzhang City, but now he had to follow her to Yangjing City because of the lack of transportation. What was going on? In fact, it wasn't that Jiyu Han didn't have any other way. The three new deity underlings could come in handy. Ice giant bear was much faster than any hovercraft when it ran at full speed. If he rode on Ice's back, he would definitely be able to return to Yuzhang City very quickly. Unfortunately, it was clearly stated in the contract that he couldn't do anything that insulted the dignity of Isis. For a deity, using them as mounts was definitely a shameful thing. Moreover, Guhan was not alone. Song Yifei and Yi Wenjun were by his side. It was impossible for Guhan to leave them behind. Mr. Guhan, have we decided to follow them to Yangjing City? Yi Wenjun suddenly interrupted with a bitter smile. If that's the case, we'd better hurry up. I see that everyone in Yangjing City has already boarded the hovercraft. They're about to leave. Guhan looked up and saw that the door of the hovercraft had indeed closed. The engine was roaring, and it had begun to accelerate slightly, ready to leave. Wait. Everyone in Yangjing City, please wait. When Jiyu Han saw this scene, he couldn't care less about his cold demeanor anymore. He immediately shouted loudly, hoping that Yangjing City's hover bus would stop. Jiyu Han was sure that his voice was loud enough for the driver of the hover bus to hear. Because the hovercraft needed to monitor the surrounding environment during its journey, any small sound would not be detected by the hovercraft's sound collection system. Therefore, the driver of the hovercraft must have heard Guhan talking to them. However, the driver turned a deaf ear to Guhan's words. Instead, he stepped on the accelerator, accelerated, and directly rushed out. In the blink of an eye, only a graceful figure was left, gradually disappearing into the horizon. What's going on? Have we been abandoned? Yi Wenjun saw the hovercraft of Yangjing City disappear into the distance, completely dumbfounded. Not only was Yi Wenjun a little dumbfounded, but even Guhan was a little dumbfounded. Did they really have to walk back to Yuzhang City? What are you guys doing here? Suddenly, a girl in white rushed out of the forest and smiled at the three dumbfounded people in Yuzhang City. Miss Ling, why are you still here? Didn't you board the hovercraft and leave together? Seeing Ling appear, Yi Wenjun's face was full of surprise. Great. Others might not have a hovercraft, but Miss Ling definitely had one. Now they were saved, and they didn't have to walk back to Yuzhang City. When I found out that the Eagle Cat Sword Spirit left first, I guessed that you fools would not be able to return to Yuzhang City. Liuyan Ling walked in front of Guhan proudly. How about it? I guessed it right. Yes. Guhan was a little embarrassed. Although this time the blame was not on him, he had indeed miscalculated a step. Lin, that's enough. Stop teasing Ji Yu Han. Since you're here, you must have a way to get us out of here, right? Song Yifei enthusiastically hugged Liuyan Ling's arm, looking like a normal close friend. In the past few days in the training array, Liuyan Ling and Song Yifei had indeed become close friends. She did not doubt Song Yifei's actions. Then, Liuyan Ling laughed and said, "Hey, this is something I bought with 3 years of red packet money. After so long, it can finally be put to use." As she spoke, Liuyan Ling released a hovercraft from her dimensional pocket. This hovercraft's exterior was perfectly streamlined, and its body was deliberately designed to be slender. There was even a majestic dragon head carved on the front of the car. Overall, rather than calling it a hovercraft, it was more appropriate to call it a dragon. This is this year's latest Yang Huang 3008. Seeing this hovercraft, Yi Wenjun's eyes instantly emitted tens of thousands of volts as she stared at this majestic and domineering hovercraft. What's a Yang Huang 3008? Compared to Yi Wenjun's infatuated expression, Song Yifei was very calm, or perhaps a little confused. She had little interest in hovercraft, and naturally did not know much about them. This is this year's latest hovercraft from Yang Huang Heavy Industry. It uses the top-of-the-line 3-phase pressurized suspension turbine engine, and can reach a maximum speed of 1,800 km per hour. It will only take an hour to fly directly from here to Yuzhang City, but that's not important. What's important is this unique design. Yang Huang Heavy Industry invited Grandmaster Gong Sun to personally design its appearance. Just this appearance alone cost Yang Huang Heavy Industry millions of hero coins. There are only 30 of them sold in the 8 major cities, and once they're sold, they'll be gone. This is really too precious. I didn't expect to see the real thing. I'm so lucky. Following that, Yi Wenjun went on and on about how valuable this Yang Huang 3008 was, how good it was, and how much it was worth collecting. As she spoke, Liuyan Ling's face lit up, and her impression of Yi Wenjun increased significantly. Although Song Yifei was also full of smiles as she listened to Yi Wenjun talk about the Yang Huang 3008, only she knew how bitter her heart was. Ignoring Song Yifei and Yi Wenjun's feelings, Guhan did not listen to Yi Wenjun's explanation. Instead, he circled the Yang Huang 3008 and asked a constructive question. "Ling, why do I feel like this car can only seat 2 people?" Guhan realized that although this Yang Huang 3008 looked quite long, its width was frighteningly narrow. It was only about 1 meter wide. This width was similar to that of a motorcycle, and a person could only maintain a sitting position inside. It was impossible to even lie down. Of course the Yang Huang 3008 can only seat 2 people. Yi Wenjun rushed to answer. In order to pursue extreme speed, we have to reduce the air resistance of this car as much as possible. It is precisely because of this unprecedented design that the Yang Huang 3008 can reduce the air resistance to a record-breaking level. This is really an extremely great design. I don't care how great this design is, I only have one question. If this car can only seat 2 people, then what about the other 2? There's 4 of us. Yi Wenjun was speechless. This was indeed a question that she could not answer. Everything about the Yang Huang 3008 was good, except that the driving space was too small. It was clearly a car, but the people it could carry could not even compare to a motorcycle. If we squeeze in at the back, we can seat 2 people. Regarding Guhan's question, Liuyan Ling seemed to be prepared. She already had a card up her sleeve, and spoke with assurance. The actual space at the back was about 0.8 meters. If 2 people squeezed together, they could indeed squeeze in, but it would definitely be very uncomfortable for the 2 people in the back. Then what about the other person? Guhan asked again. The driver's seat definitely cannot be squeezed, so where is the space for the other person? And here. Liuyan Ling walked to the back of the Yang Huang 3008 and opened the back cover, revealing a space that was 1 meter long and 1 meter wide. This space can even fit one person in? How about it? Any more questions? This car actually has a trunk. Seeing the appearance of this space, Guhan was shocked. Having lived for so long, Guhan had never heard of a hovercraft with a trunk that was an antique design from 1,000 years ago. Ever since humans invented the dimensional pocket, the trunk had completely lost its use. With something as convenient as the dimensional pocket, the trunk was undoubtedly an extremely useless design. Therefore, ever since the invention of the hovercraft, there had not been a single hovercraft equipped with a trunk. The space saved was used to improve the user's riding experience, or to optimize the layout of the vehicle. In short, the trunk had completely disappeared from all forms of transportation. This is the true greatness of the Yang Huang 3008. Seeing the trunk, Yi Wenjun was actually moved to tears. This is a type of sentiment. Do you understand sentiment? Before the apocalypse, there was a famous saying, "Those who sell their hammers are inferior to those who sell their emotions." Chapter 444. Regardless of whether this trunk was a matter of sentiment or not, Guhan had to face a very serious problem. Who was lying in the trunk? Normally, people would be polite to each other when faced with such a situation. They would pretend to be friendly and say that they would let each other do it. Yi Wenjun, you sit in the trunk. However, Guhan was very decisive. He did not pretend to be polite at all and directly asked Yi Wenjun to sit in the trunk. Guhan's reason was also very straightforward. Are you going to let him and the 2 girls sit in the trunk? You, Yi Wenjun, were originally brought along by Guhan. If you don't sit in the trunk, who else should sit? In this regard, Yi Wenjun's expression was very calm. If he were to sit in a seat, he would feel uncomfortable all over. Sitting in the trunk was the best choice. No, Yi Wenjun can't sit in the trunk. Unexpectedly, Liuyan Ling stopped him. He wants to drive. Drive? Ling, aren't you supposed to drive this car? Song Ifei asked curiously. Aren't you the owner of this car? Who said that the car belongs to someone who has to drive? I just like to collect hovercrafts. I personally don't like driving. I don't even have a driver's license. Liuyan Ling said this matter-of-factly. I heard from Yi Wenjun in the trial that he has a driver's license. Let him drive. I'll sit in the back. Then why don't you let Guhan drive? Song Ifei was not happy. If Yi Wenjun drove, didn't that mean that Guhan would have to sit in the trunk? Or let her sit in the trunk and watch Guhan and Liuyan Ling squeeze together? I don't care. If Guhan also has a driver's license, I don't mind letting him drive. Liuyan Ling looked at Guhan provocatively, as if asking Guhan if he had a driver's license. Forget it, let Yi Wenjun drive. I'll sit in the trunk. Guhan waved his hand. He had spent all his time before the age of 18 researching games and practicing swordsmanship, but he had only read a little about hovercraft. He had never actually used one, let alone something like a driver's license. Do you really want me to drive this car? Yi Wenjun rubbed her hands excitedly. To be able to open the legendary Yang Huang 3008 with her own hands, Yi Wenjun felt that it would be worth it even if she died. As a result, the position of the hovercraft was decided. Yi Wenjun was responsible for driving, Liuyan Ling and Song Ifei squeezed into the backseat, and Guhan sat alone in the trunk. In the end, Guhan was the biggest loser. Needless to say, Yi Wenjun's driving level was still quite good. The road conditions along the way were not good. There were boulders that suddenly blocked the road, but Yi Wenjun drove steadily without any tremors. Changyang Mountain was about 1,800 kilometers away from Yuzhong City in a straight line. If they drove along the wreckage of the highway, it would be about 2,500 kilometers. Although the Yang Huang 3008 could reach a top speed of 1,800 kilometers per hour, that was only in theory. It had to be driven on absolutely flat roads. On roads that were full of uneven terrain and trees, the car could at most reach 100 kilometers per hour. There was a particularly bad stretch of road in the middle that could only go up to 40 kilometers per hour. In terms of average speed, the Yang Huang 3008 was only about 20 kilometers per hour faster. If they were to go back the way they came, they might be able to reach Yuzhong City a day or two earlier. But according to the news that Liuyan Ling received from Yangjing City, the entire area around Yuzhong City had been completely sealed off. Only one road near Fujian province was barely passable, so Guhan and the others had to take a big detour. It would take them at least 3 days to reach Yuzhong City. Fine, 3 days it was. Guhan obediently sat in the trunk for a while. The trunk was less than 80 centimeters high. Inside, Guhan could not even maintain a meditative posture. He could only sit sideways. It was a very painful position, so in the end, Guhan gave up on his image and lay down in the trunk. Guhan realized that the trunk was a good place to be. Did the people sitting in the seats have the ability to lie down like him? This was a new car, and the trunk had never been used before. Apart from the unique plastic smell of a new car, there was no other dirty things inside. Guhan just lay down in the trunk. Perhaps it was because the space was too small to do anything. Guhan found that he actually had a rare moment of leisure. He did not need to think or think about anything. All he needed to do was lie down quietly. He did not need to think about what he was going to do next. This was a rare opportunity for Guhan to relax. Accompanied by the rocking of the hovercraft, the faint roar of the engine, and the voices of Liuyan Ling and Song Yifei, Guhan slowly closed his eyes and fell asleep. It was a very deep sleep. Guhan did not even have a dream. It was not until he felt his head moving that Guhan woke up from his dream. As soon as Guhan opened his eyes, he saw a white and tender little foot swaying in front of his eyes. From time to time, it would use its clear toes to pinch Guhan's nose. No wonder Guhan felt slightly suffocated in his dream. What is this Jiu Yun doing? Guhan thought angrily. He forgot to mention that when he left the trial formation, Guhan brought Jiu Yun out with him. The reason was very simple. Because Guhan had mastered the trial formation, he found the lost Jiu Yun in a separate room. Although Guhan could see that Liuyan Ling still had some doubts about this and felt that something was wrong, Liuyan Ling could not think of what was wrong, so she could only keep quiet about it. Jiu Yun was naturally not placed in the trunk. She was taken by Liuyan Ling and Song Yifei to sit in the back seat, which made the already narrow space even more cramped. The small and tender foot in front of Guhan naturally could not belong to Liuyan Ling or Song Yifei. It could only belong to the restless Jiu Yun. This girl took advantage of her being a child, and only her foot could pass through the small door behind the seat and reach Guhan's face. Generally speaking, there would be a small door connecting the trunk and the back seat. The people in the back seat could take something out of the trunk through the small door. Now that Guhan was lying in the trunk, the small door naturally had to be kept open so that oxygen could flow into the trunk through the small door, lest Guhan suffocate to death. Jiu Yun used this small door to put her foot on Guhan's face. "Brother, you're awake." Jiu Yun's voice passed into Guhan's ears through the sword mark. "Brother, do you think Xiaoyun's foot is beautiful? I'll give you 3 seconds, you immediately take your foot back." Guhan rolled his eyes and threatened Jiu Yun fiercely. "Hehe, brother, look at Yun's 2 toes. What's on them?" Jiu Yun's voice was full of naughtiness. Although Guhan understood this, he still couldn't help but focus on Jiu Yun's toes. As a result, he found that there was a black hair between Jiu Yun's thumb and index finger. It was a typical short hair that was less than the length of a middle finger. However, it was different from normal hair. This short hair was abnormally twisted, with 5 or 6 creases on it. Normal hair was smooth. It might be a little curved, but it would never have traces like creases. But this hair was different. It was twisted as if it stayed in a conservative and oppressive environment and was pressed by something every day. This was not hair that should grow on a human's head. Could it be? Guhan thought of a very bad scene. He could roughly guess where this hair came from. He angrily scolded Jiu Yun, "Hurry up and throw this hair away. If something like this happens again, I'll..." "Brother, what are you going to do?" Jiu Yun didn't care about Guhan's threat. She was still giggling. "Brother, don't you like this hair?" Just now, Yun's toes were placed in brother's mouth. Brother even sucked a few times. It was like sucking milk. Guhan didn't know what to say. Should he stop the car and find a place to rinse his mouth? Hee, brother, don't be angry. Yuna will show you something good. After saying that, Guhan felt the scenery in front of him change. The dark place in the trunk turned into a very bright space. This is the seat. Guhan recognized Yi Wenjun, who was driving in front of him. The scenery in front of him should be the back seat of the hovercraft. In other words, this was Ji Yun's perspective. Guhan was looking at the world through Ji Yun's eyes. This was a special connection between the wielder and the sword lady. The wielder could share the sword lady's vision through the sword mark. Similarly, the sword lady could also share the wielder's vision through the sword mark. Because of this ability, the wielder could command his sword lady to fight even if he was hiding in an extremely hidden place. However, this ability could only be triggered when the sword mark was at least at the 6th grade. Guhan and Duyu's sword mark was only at the 8th grade. He didn't expect this ability to be triggered. Could it be because of the yin-yang swordsmanship that both Duyu and Yi Tian's sword marks were strengthened? Alright, Guhan didn't have much time to think about the reason behind this. Because soon, Guhan would see something very interesting through Guhan's eyes. Sister Ling, how big is your OP? Ji Yun asked innocently. Hearing Ji Yun's question, Lionian Ling fell silent for a while. Hey, I've never measured it. Sister has always been practicing martial arts. How could a martial artist have the time to care about these things? But why does Xiao Yun feel that Sister Ling's OP is a little smaller than Sister Afei's? It was as if a little devil had appeared behind Ji Yun. Sister Linlin, let little Yun have a look at your OP. Chapter 445. Alright, Sister Linlin will let you have a look. Let's see if Sister Linlin's OP is big or not. Lionian Ling pressed a button in the hovercraft, and a metal partition was lowered between her and the driver. She didn't forget to close the small door leading to the trunk, creating an independent space in the back row. Seeing that no one could see them, Lionian Ling took off her top, revealing her 2 round breasts. Guhan, who shared Ji Yun's view, could see Lionian Ling's entire upper body. When Lionian Ling was wearing clothes, she didn't stand out, but once she took off her clothes, the size of her OP was really good. Wow! Sister Ling, you are so sexy. Ji Yun's eyes twinkled, and she said, looks like you really are a bit bigger than Sister Ling's. Yeah. Don't lie to me. Lionian Ling patted Ji Yun's head happily. Of course, Big Brother said that children can't lie. I, little Yun, am a good child who never lies. Ji Yun said cheerfully. Lionian, you're only looking through Sister Ling's clothes. How do you know that Sister Afei isn't as big as Sister Ling when she takes off her clothes? Hearing Ji Yun's words, Song Afei was not convinced. She took off her top, showing her snow-white skin in front of Ji Yun. Come, let's see who's bigger, me or your Sister Linling. After saying that, Song Afei purposely puffed out her chest, making the curves of her breasts rise a bit more. 2 girls in underwear were sitting shoulder to shoulder, trying their best to compare whose OP pie was bigger. This scene made the blood in the peeping Ji Yuhan's body start to burn again. The side effect of 3 strikes of green lotus started to take effect again. They seem to be the same size. Ji Yun can't tell. Ji Yun looked dizzy, but she wasn't faking it. If the 2 of them really put their OP pies on the table to compare, without measuring with a ruler, they really couldn't tell whose was bigger. Afei's should be 1 size bigger than Ling's. No, it should be 1.5 sizes bigger. As a bystander, Guhan muttered the truth. But after saying that, Guhan regretted it. What the F***ck was he doing? Wasn't this acting like a hooligan? Was his eyesight supposed to be used here? How about this? Ji Yun rolled her eyes. Xiao Yun heard my brother say that the size of a girl's OP isn't important, but the shape of the OP. Only the kind that was as tall and straight as a bowl was good-looking. If it was as soft as a sack, no matter how big it was, there was nothing to look at. Why don't you take off your bra and let Xiao Yun see whose shape is better? Xiao Yun, how could your brother be like this? How could he say such shameless words to a girl? Hearing Ji Yun's words, Lionian Ling's face turned red. She didn't expect this Guhan to be such a person in the dark even though he looked so serious. This made Guhan feel wronged. Guhan swore to God that he had never said such words to Ji Yun. He didn't even think about these problems. These were all made up by Ji Yun. Unfortunately, Guhan couldn't take the initiative to explain these things. Otherwise, wouldn't it mean that he had been secretly watching this erotic scene in the back seat? Guhan could guarantee that if Guhan ran out and took the initiative to explain, Liuyan Ling would throw Guhan out of the car the next moment. Of course, maybe she would come back to pick Guhan up after a while. I think it's not bad. We can compete, Ling. Song Yifei smiled charmingly and then reached for the zipper on the back. It took Guhan about 3 hours to calm down his body's desire through self-regulation. The after-effects of the 3 green lotus swords were getting more and more difficult to calm down. He didn't have such a strong desire when he took a bath with Wen Maiyun for the first time. It only took Guhan a few minutes to calm himself down. But now, Guhan just looked at 2 plump and tall oppis, and he couldn't control himself anymore. No, if this goes on, everything will be out of control. Maybe I should change my way to treat the 3 green lotus sword. Guhan thought silently. I remember that in ancient times, there was a hydrologist named Yu who once said that everything in the world is better to let it go. If I continue to gamble like this, sooner or later I won't be able to control myself. So, I might as well try to let it go. It was not hard to imagine that Guhan's life would change greatly in the future. But right now, he didn't need to care about these things. When Guhan finally calmed his restless body, the sun slowly set over the land. It was getting late, and they couldn't continue driving anymore. The night was a nightmare for hovercrafts. Guhan and the others had to find a place to camp and wait for dawn. Guhan looked at the map on his personal terminal and found that his team was now in Shaanxi province. Coincidentally, it was near Xianyang. If they walked a few dozen kilometers east, they would be able to see Xianyang Airport. Thinking of the name Xianyang Airport, Guhan couldn't help but sigh. Although he had never been there in real life, the unforgettable experience in the game constantly reminded Guhan that it was a place that should not be forgotten. Forget it. Now is not the time to think about these things. It's more important to get back to Yuzhang City. Guhan threw these messy thoughts to the back of his mind. The most important thing now was to find a suitable place to camp. As mentioned before, for a swordbearer, the best place to camp was a place that had been chosen by the previous swordbearers. It could save a lot of trouble. However, Guhan couldn't find any traces of a campsite after looking around the forest. He could only choose an empty stone ground that had been blown by the wind as his campsite. There was a cliff behind him, and a large swamp on his left. Generally, Yuan Ku wouldn't be able to attack from these 2 directions. As long as he kept an eye on the other 2 directions, this would be a relatively safe place. I wonder if Bastet and the others have caught up to us. When Guhan left Changyang Mountain, he let the 3 of them follow the hovercraft. However, less than half an hour after they left, Guhan lost contact with the 3 Yuan Ku. By controlling their divinity, Guhan could maintain contact with the 3 of them within a range of about 20 kilometers. This was also why Guhan had stipulated that they were not allowed to leave that range. However, in order to restrict them, he did not completely remove the seal on them. He only raised their strength to the level of a dragon-level Yuan Ku. It was unrealistic for them to keep up with the hovercraft for a few hours at such a speed. Perhaps they could keep up with the hovercraft for a short period of time, but as time passed, their endurance would decline, and they would not be able to keep up with Guhan's hovercraft. However, Guhan had told the 3 unlucky guys his route in advance. As long as they were within 20 kilometers of him, he would be able to contact them immediately. Of course, considering some unexpected circumstances, Guhan also made an agreement with them that if they really couldn't find Guhan, they would go directly to the ruins of Autumn Water Square near Yuzhang City and wait for Guhan to find them. Fortunately, after Guhan had set up a temporary camp here, Guhan's senses had received the information of Bastet and the other 2's divinities. These 3 guys had finally arrived. Under Guhan's command, the 3 Yuan Ku sneaked to the vicinity of Guhan's camp. Guhan used the excuse of scouting the environment to leave the camp to find these 3 unlucky guys. He personally removed part of the seal on their divinities, allowing their strength to reach the meteor rank, which was the level that Isis had previously abused Guhan. Then, Guhan ordered them to be responsible for guarding the camp's surroundings. If they encountered Yuan Ku, they had to immediately report to Guhan. If Guhan's level was low, he could let Song Ifei and Yi Wenjun kill them as practice. If their level was high, he would let Guhan do it himself. If their level was higher, he would let Bastet and the other two kill them. In short, with Bastet and the other two guarding by his side, Guhan could have a good night's sleep. Unfortunately, Guhan did not sleep well in the end. On the contrary, he did not close his eyes for almost the entire night. When he met Song Ifei and the others the next day, there was a big dark circle around his eyes. Guhan, what did you do last night? I saw you tightly shut your tent and did not allow anyone to enter. You didn't even come to keep watch at night. Tell me honestly, did you do something unforgivable to Etienne? Seeing Guhan like this, Liuyan Ling angrily caught up with Guhan and questioned him sternly. This stinky guy actually had the nerve to let two girls keep watch at night while he slept soundly in his tent. No. Ji Yuhan denied it without hesitation. Could it be that you actually did something to such a cute Qingpin? Liuyan Ling deliberately raised her tone, the meaning in her words self-evident. What are you thinking about? Ji Yuhan rolled her eyes at fleeting time Lin. His Majesty Shroud the Heavens has left quite a number of sword scars in the area as a reward for being the first to complete the trial. I've been working hard all night just to raise the sword scars of poverty and Heavenly Reliance's sword scars. What's in your head? You're a sword mark. Liuyan Ling was stunned for a moment, then immediately smiled. Then let me ask you, what grade are your Qingpin and Etienne now? In any case, they're not any worse than your Heaven's Inquisition, Guhan said in a bad mood. Since when did the Liuyan clan lack sword marks? Liuyan Ling's Heaven's Inquisition sword had long since reached the first grade. Chapter 446. Just as Guhan had said, he had been busy in the tent for an entire night, and had made Qingpin, Yi Tian, and Duyu all become first-grade swords. Yi Tian and Duyu were fine, as they tightly shut their mouths and endured the pain, not making a single sound. However, Qingpin was like a pig being slaughtered. Every time he inserted the sword mark back into Qingpin's body, he would let out a series of ghostly wails and wolf howls. Otherwise, Guhan wouldn't have wasted an entire night. Yi Tian and Duyu, the two sword ladies, had used less time to carve sword marks than Qingpin had. I don't know if everyone still remembers the process of carving sword marks. First, you need to pour the sword mark into your mouth, then use the sword essence in your body to wrap around the mark, and slowly send it into your purple palace. Afterwards, you evenly spread the sword essence over the mark in your body, causing it to become real. Depending on the grade of the sword lady, the number of sword marks required was also different. An ancient sword lady only needed 1 sword mark, a treasure sword lady needed 5, a famed sword lady needed 10, a spirit sword lady needed 15, and so on. Logically speaking, Qingpin was an ancient sword lady, so she only needed 1 sword mark to make her own sword mark become real. But in Yuzhong Academy, when Qing Jian made his first deep sword mark, Ji Yuhan had used a total of 10 sets of sword mark imprints that were not used in the deep sword mark dust, to turn Qing Jian's sword mark from illusion to reality. Previously, Guhan had thought that perhaps it was because his method was a bit rough, but this time, Guhan was completely sure that Qingpin's sword mark was indeed different from a normal sword lady's sword mark. She needed to use 10 sword marks to make her own sword mark become real. This was equivalent to the consumption of a famed sword lady. After the sword mark of Qingpin's sword became real, the next thing to do was to forcibly take the sword mark out of Guhan's zifu. This would bring great pain to Guhan, just like a caesarean section without anesthesia. Generally speaking, the sword wielder would only do this once in a while. This was because the sword mark was very precious, and it would take a lot of time to accumulate the sword mark required for each deep sword mark. Secondly, the pain from the deep sword mark was too intense. It was fine to endure it once, but if the sword holder had to endure it a second time, he would probably have a mental breakdown. But on this night, before making Qingpin's deep sword mark, Guhan had already experienced this pain for a total of 14 times. This was a painful torture for both Guhan and Guhan's sword ladies. Around the third to eighth time, even someone as strong as Guhan's nerves were almost broken by this kind of pain. But there was no other way. No one knew what kind of tragic battle they would have to face when they returned to Yuzhang City, so Guhan had to increase his strength to the limit. Guhan estimated that once all three of his sword ladies reached the first grade, Guhan's strength would increase by at least 10 times. This was not an exaggeration, because once the sword ladies reached the first grade, Guhan's physical fitness would also increase by 5 times. In addition to the effects of the yin-yang sword secret art, just his physical fitness alone would increase by 10 times. Not to mention, after reaching the first grade, he would also be able to unlock all the sword ladies' skills. With such a terrifying increase, Flood Dragon and Dragon Yuan Ku, who were a realm higher than Guhan, Guhan was confident that he could kill them. As for Nether and Meteor Yuan Ku, who were a realm higher, Guhan still wouldn't be able to beat them, but his chances of escaping would increase by a lot. In short, Guhan made up his mind. Tonight, he had to make all his sword ladies reach the first grade. Although the pain reached the limit between the third and eighth time, and Guhan almost collapsed. But after the eighth time, the pain didn't seem so painful anymore. Guhan's body had already become numb to this kind of pain, and the pain seemed to have become natural. When Guhan made a deep impression on Qingpin, he could already ignore the pain of this C-section to a certain extent. He expressionlessly pulled out the solid sword mark from his body, and then tore open Qingpin's clothes. He let Qingpin take over control of the sword mark, and then he inserted the sword mark into his body. Someone had once compared the pain that the sword ladies endured during the deep sword mark was less than half that of the wielder. This was also the reason why the Heavenly Sword and the Duyu Sword could endure 7 consecutive deep sword marks. But for Qingpin, this degree of pain seemed to be more than 10 times that of Guhan. The sharp tip of the sword only slightly touched her belly, and she began to howl like a pig being slaughtered, shouting that she absolutely didn't want a deep sword mark. Qingpin, be strong. I believe in you, you can do it. You just need to close your eyes and stab your belly. As long as you persevere, I, Guhan, will agree to any condition you have. If he could bear this pain for Qingpin, Guhan would definitely do it for her without any hesitation. However, there was no alternative, and Qingpin had to bear it herself. Guhan could only keep encouraging her, motivating her, and using all sorts of things to stimulate her. After much persuasion, Qingpin finally completed the first deep sword mark of the night. She was drenched in sweat, and regardless of her naked body, she jumped onto Guhan's body and used her fists to pound Guhan's head with all her might. It hurts so much, Qingpin. It hurts so much, Qingpin. She cried and complained. Regarding Qingpin's complaints, Guhan could only silently bear it. When Qingpin was tired, she once again swallowed a higher level sword mark, and then forcibly pulled out the purple mansion. She told the confused Qingpin that she still had to complete this kind of deep sword mark of the night. Guhan didn't want to recall what happened at the end of that night, and also didn't want to recall how much effort she had spent to let Qingpin complete these 7 deep sword marks. This was simply an experience that she couldn't bear to recall. She was so tired that her whole body was sweating profusely, and she lost a few kilograms. The other one's eyes were swollen from crying. As soon as the deep sword mark was finished, she drilled into the infant pouch on Guhan's chest. She slept for 2 days and 2 nights, and finally recovered her spirit. However, the way she looked at Guhan already carried a little bit of hatred, as if she couldn't wait to eat Guhan alive. All right, Qingpin, don't be angry anymore. From now on, you don't need to make any more deep sword marks. This is called once and for all. Before Qingpin fell asleep, Guhan comforted Qingpin like this. Little did she know that for Qingpin, there was no such thing as once and for all in this world. The next day, they continued to set out. Guhan was still lying in his trunk. At this time, Guhan was very grateful that he could stay in the trunk, because it gave Guhan an excellent opportunity to sleep. From the morning they set out, he slept all the way until the sun was about to set in the afternoon. Only then did Guhan slowly wake up from his sleep. After this sleep, Guhan's spirit had also almost recovered, but the dark circles on his eyes couldn't disappear so quickly, and they still hung on Guhan's eyes. You slept so comfortably all the way, Liuan Ling said with dissatisfaction with her hands on her waist. This was completely different from her plan. She wanted to see Guhan uncomfortable all over in the trunk, instead of sleeping soundly and drooling. On the contrary, after the novelty at the beginning, squeezing in the back with Song Yifei and Ji Yun was an extremely torturous thing. After a day, Liuan Ling's bones all over her body seemed to be stewed into radish pork ribs soup. Well, you all go to sleep tonight, and I will be responsible for the night watch alone. Guhan stretched. Although he slept very comfortably, he could only sleep curled up in such a narrow space in the trunk. Guhan's bones were not much tighter than Liuan Ling's. That's more like it. Liuan Ling saw that Guhan took the initiative to take on the task of night watch, and her heart suddenly felt a lot more balanced. As it gradually became late at night, Song Yifei and Liuan Ling squeezed into a tent to rest. After 2 days of squeezing together, these two people seemed to have a much better relationship. Even when they slept, they would lie on the same bed. Poor Guhan could only stay outside, quietly staring into the distance. In fact, Guhan could also rest, because the 3 Egyptian gods had once again successfully chased after them and guarded the camp's surroundings. If anything went wrong, they should be the first to notice it. This place was about near Huainan. The normal route from Shaanxi to Hubei and then to Jiangxi had been blocked. Guhan could only take a big circle from Shaanxi to Henan, to Anhui, to Zhejiang, to Fujian, and finally to Yuzhang in Jiangxi. You can go look for a map of China to see how f***ked up this route is. The campsite that Ji Yuhan had chosen was beside a small river. As the shore was filled with rocks, listening to the sound of the flowing water and breathing in the air that had a hint of sweetness and the fragrance of grass, the night did not seem so unbearable. Just when Guhan planned to spend this rare peaceful night, suddenly, the green onion stone in his hand began to flash. This was a sign that the 3 Egyptian gods had contacted Guhan through the divinity. Could it be that the dangerous Yuan Ku had appeared around here? Guhan quickly got in touch with Bast. "Sir, can you come over for a moment?" On the other side, Bast's voice was a little hesitant. "What happened?" "It's like this, sir. We saved a person. No, it's a Yuan Ku. But her identity is a little special, so you need to personally decide how we should deal with her." Bast actually saved a Yuan Ku. This was something that Guhan had never expected. Chapter 447. Guhan ordered Isais to guard the campsite in his place, and he quickly walked to base its position. In the middle of the grass, a white cat stood in a strange posture. Beside the cat, a husky was yawning in boredom, sticking out its tongue. Beside them, a human could be seen lying face down on the grass, motionless, as if dead. "What's going on? When did I ask you to save Yuan Ku?" Guhan walked to the side of Yuan Ku, who had fainted on the ground. This Yuan Ku was wearing a white short-sleeved shirt, a light yellow cotton vest, a grey miniskirt, a pair of bubble socks, and a pair of women's leather shoes. Just looking at this outfit, Guhan felt that it was a little familiar, as if he had seen it somewhere before. "Actually, it's not really saving her, meow." Bastet stuck out its tongue. "She was chased by Yuan Ku and fled here. I just followed your orders to drive away that Yuan Ku, meow. I didn't save her, meow. She was chased by Yuan Ku." Guhan was stunned when he heard this. He didn't expect to encounter an internal conflict between Yuan Ku. Seeing that the rescued Yuan Ku looked like a human girl, he didn't know what her level was. If it was a flood dragon or above, then there was still a possibility of communication. If it wasn't a flood dragon, then he would just kill it. Even if such a Yuanshan was in human form, it would only be a Yuanshan that only knew how to kill. Forget it, just kill her directly. Guhan thought about it and found that he had become a lot more soft-hearted recently. In front of him was a Yuan Ku. Why would he consider the possibility of communication? Just kill her directly. Only a dead Yuan Ku was a good Yuan Ku. There was no need to think so much. "Bastet, kill her. I still need to go back and keep watch." Guhan stared at Bast and said. This was an opportunity to see if Bast was truly following him, if he would listen to his orders, and if he was willing to make a move against Yuan Ku. If Bastet did not act, then Guhan's trust in the three Egyptian gods would be greatly reduced. This meant that Bast still believed that he was Yuan Ku from the bottom of his heart. If the three of them were to be released in the future, they would sooner or later still harm the human race. Kill her. Sure enough, Bast hesitated. However, his hesitation was not because of the hesitation towards Yuan Ku that Guhan had imagined, but because of another reason that Guhan had not thought of. Sir, she and I used to know each other. We're just friends. Bast said awkwardly. Former friends? Then isn't this Yuan Ku the old Yuan Ku that existed 700 years ago? Guhan was shocked. There were not many old Yuan Ku that had more than 700 years of history. Most of them had died under the swords of the swordbearers, and less than 10% of them had survived. Actually, it's a little earlier than that, meow. Bast smiled bitterly. We met her once when we first came to this world. At that time, it seemed to be less than 3 months since the apocalypse that you speak of, meow. This is actually a Yuan Ku that has survived since the apocalypse. Guhan was even more shocked. If Yuan Ku that had lived for 700 years was said to be less than 10%, then Yuan Ku that had survived since the apocalypse was said to be less than 10%. Such a living fossil like Yuan Ku was rarely seen by humans. In that case, I can't kill this Yuan Ku rashly. Who knows, I might be able to get some information about the Jendi era from her mouth. Guhan thought to himself. His killing intent towards this Yuan Ku was temporarily extinguished. With a thought, Zhongxian placed his hand on Yuan Zhen's waist, intending to flip her over to see what she looked like. He wanted to see if he could find some information about Yuan Zhen from his personal terminal. However, before Guhan's hand could touch this Yuan Ku's body, he only touched her clothes lightly. A numbing feeling that went straight to his heart instantly sent Guhan flying a few meters away. What a strong electric current! Guhan crawled up from the ground and found that his palm was already charred black. There was even a smell of meat wafting from it. If not for Guhan's physical fitness being strengthened by 10 times, that electric shock would have taken Guhan's life. Even the electric current protecting my body almost shattered my heart when I was unconscious. It seems that this Yuan Ku is at least a nether or meteor Yuan Ku. Guhan's heart function was obviously damaged, and his ability to supply blood was very obvious. Guhan felt dizzy all over. Guhan adjusted his chi and blood, then shot out 2 sword auras and used them to flip Yuan Ku's body over, revealing her face. However, it was currently dark, and under the moonlight, he could not see her appearance clearly. Guhan took out a flashlight and shone it on her face. Only then could he see her appearance clearly. It's her. Guhan finally knew why the other party's clothes looked so familiar. It was because Guhan had met this Yuan Ku once in the game. I don't know if everyone still remembers the Yu Wang Gojian sword dungeon. In order to quickly escape from the ruins, Guhan threw a coin. Then, with the help of a young girl, Yuan Ku, he was directly thrown to the entrance of the honest man's grocery where Kanzu lived in the fleeting year calendar. In 10 seconds, he completed the main storyline quest that other players could not complete in 20 minutes. In order to study the method to clear this dungeon, Guhan had studied this important young girl, Yuan Ku, countless times. That's right, that young girl, Yuan Ku, was the Yuan Ku in front of Guhan. Guhan would never forget this face, a face with a hint of pride in its tranquility. This Yuan Ku was quite popular on the official forums. Every day, many new players would discuss this Yuan Ku's true identity. Especially after Guhan's Yu Wang Gojian sword dungeon was released, the discussion about this young girl, Yuan Ku, reached a climax. Countless people began to discuss this Yuan Ku's identity, but no one came to a conclusion. They did not even know her name, let alone meet her in real life. At this moment, this young girl, Yuan Ku, actually appeared in front of Guhan. Guhan could not help but sigh. This was the legendary fate. That's right, Bast just said that he was friends with this young girl, Yuan Ku. Does that mean that Bast is this young girl, Yuan Ku's true identity? Bast, what's this Yuan Ku's name? Guhan asked quickly. Name? Bast's cat face scrunched together. Meow. What's her name again? After meowing for a while, Bast finally gave up and said dejectedly, "Sorry, sir. It's been too long. Bast has forgotten her name, meow." Well, with such a small brain, it was understandable that it did not have a good memory. It was fine if it could not remember this Yuan Ku's name. However, Guhan did not give up. He decided to search for the items on this Yuan Ku to see if he could find any relevant clues. Guhan controlled his sword energy and carefully stroked the other party's body. Soon, he found a shield-shaped item on the other party's chest. It had a red background and a yellow four-leaf clover printed in the center. Well, in fact, Guhan did not know if this flower was a four-leaf clover. In fact, Guhan felt that it was more like two sanitary napkins stacked together. However, something as serious as the president probably wouldn't have sanitary napkins printed on it, so Ji Yuhan decided to treat it as a four-leaf clover. In the center of the four-leaf clover, there was a strange letter that looked like the English letter E written backwards. Which country's emblem is this? Or is it the emblem of some family? Or is it the logo of some company? Looking at this emblem, Guhan was a little puzzled. Next, Guhan found a few coins in the pocket of the other party's miniskirt. However, these coins did not look like coins because there were no numbers on them, nor were there key bank names and other information. There was only a frog printed on both sides, and the frog was printed very crudely. It was obvious that it was made by a small workshop. It was impossible for a coin made by a national agency. However, Guhan still found some clues from these coins. First of all, these coins looked extremely old. The bumpy pictures printed on them were almost worn out. The frog was a figment of Guhan's imagination. There were a few small words on the back of this coin. These words were so worn that only about one-third of the strokes could be seen. However, based on these remaining strokes, Guhan judged that these were not Chinese characters, but more like Fusang characters. To be able to wear to this extent, this coin should have a history of hundreds or even thousands of years. It should be the coin that Yuan Ku brought with her when she crossed into the human world. So, although this coin was old, it was well maintained. There was no rust at all. This was a very rare thing. From this, Guhan could judge that this Yuan Ku should be a Yuan Ku from Fusang. Sure enough, in another pocket on the skirt, Guhan found a certificate to prove this. This certificate should be Yuan Ku's own certificate because her photo was posted at the top of the certificate. There were a lot of words printed on it, which should be the personal information of this Yuan Ku. Unfortunately, it was not as good as the coin. The words on the certificate had been worn for thousands of years, and 90% of the words had been lost. Only a few Japanese words and an LV5 level mark could be identified. In addition to the coins, badges, and certificates, Guhan could not find anything useful from the other party. For now, it seemed that the only way was to take off this Yuan Ku's clothes and see if there were any tattoos on her body to provide Guhan with clues. Well, it was just taking off her clothes. Chapter 448. Under the moonlight, the invisible sword Qi slashed down slightly, and the Yuan Yang's clothes were reduced to over 100 pieces of cloth that were almost identical in size. They scattered in all directions, and the Yuan Yang's body gave off a hazy sense of beauty under the moonlight. Logically speaking, this body wasn't that beautiful. Her breasts weren't high, her buttocks weren't perky, and her legs weren't long. In terms of figure, she was only above average. However, her face was very pretty. In general, she could be considered a very good beauty. Although Guhan had rudely shredded her clothes, Guhan didn't focus his attention on her alluring naked body. Instead, he focused his attention on her shoulder. There was a symbol similar to the shape of a U printed on it. In the middle of the U was the Chinese word freedom. She's from the Freedom Metropolis. When he saw this symbol, Guhan was shocked. This symbol was unique to the Yuan Ku of the Freedom Metropolis. Only people from the Freedom Metropolis would have such a symbol engraved on their shoulders to prove their identity. Guhan immediately shone his personal terminal on the symbol on the other party's shoulder. Under the illumination of the terminal, the symbol vaguely displayed a QR code. Confirming verification code. Please wait. After comparison, this freedom emblem is the real freedom emblem. The person who engraved this emblem is confirmed to be freedom number 00000012. Please note that you are not allowed to take the initiative to attack before the other party attacks you. If the other party takes the initiative to attack, please be sure to record video evidence so that the base city can negotiate with the Freedom Metropolis. The report from the personal terminal reassured Guhan, telling him that the other party was indeed a true Freedom Metropolis and not a fake Yuan-Ku. Because the Freedom Metropolis was independent from Yuan-Ku, they were almost exactly the same as Yuan-Ku. It was impossible to distinguish the identity of the Freedom Metropolis and Yuan-Ku through simple means. In the early days of the Freedom Metropolis, in order to destroy the contract between the Freedom Metropolis and humans, many Yuan-Ku impersonated the Freedom Metropolis to kill human sword-bearers in an attempt to create ill feelings between the Freedom Metropolis and humans. At first, the plan worked well. Humans and the Freedom Metropolis were like fire and water, and the contract was about to become a pile of waste paper. However, Jendi, who led the humans at that time, was very wise. After personally going to the Freedom Metropolis to discuss with the leader of the Freedom Metropolis, he found a way to quickly identify the Freedom Metropolis. Through a series of extremely complicated secret keys, a series of freedom emblem was made. Every freedman had to have a freedman's mark engraved on a certain part of their body. When they encountered humans, they could use the freedman's mark to confirm that they belonged to the Freedom Metropolis and prevent Yuan Yang from impersonating them. The authentication method of the freedom emblem was only in the hands of humans and the Freedom Metropolis. Yuan-Ku could not imitate it at all, so it became the most effective way to confirm the other party's identity as a Freedom Metropolis. At that moment, Guhan's personal terminal had confirmed the authenticity of the freedom emblem and the fact that the other party was indeed a Freedom Metropolis. Guhan did not expect that the girl who had helped him so much in the dungeon was actually a Freedom Metropolis. But after thinking about it, this was the most correct explanation. It was precisely because the other party was a Freedom Metropolis that she had never had any conflict with humans and had always lived in the Freedom Metropolis. That was why there was no information about this Freedom Metropolis on the internet. However, Guhan guessed that there was still information about this Freedom Metropolis in the official confidential information. Otherwise, Sword Maiden Online would not have been able to present her appearance 100% in the game. Right, look at this Freedom Metropolis's serial number, 0000012. This meant that the other party was an extremely senior Freedom Metropolis. This also matched the situation of her appearing in the human world on the third day of the apocalypse. It was just that the Freedom Metropolis had been living in seclusion for the past 100 years, living a happy and comfortable life. Why would she suddenly appear here and be chased by Yuan-Ku until she fainted? Well, these were not questions that Guhan needed to explore. Since the other party was a Freedom Metropolis, Guhan could not be like Yuan-Ku and kill her directly, nor could he leave her here. Guhan had to wake her up. Otherwise, he would be destroying the friendship between humans and Freedom Metropolis. But how should he wake up this Freedom Metropolis? It seemed that the human medical pods were useless to Yuan-Ku. But soon, Guhan did not have to worry about this problem because the Freedom Metropolis's body suddenly moved, and at the same time, her eyelids twitched. It seemed that she was about to wake up on her own. This is bad. Seeing that the Freedom Metropolis was about to wake up, Guhan was not happy. Instead, he was shocked because the Freedom Metropolis was completely naked. The person who did it was none other than Guhan himself. If the Freedom Metropolis knew that he was the one who shredded her clothes, it might destroy the relationship between humans and Freedom Metropolis. Looking at the Freedom Metropolis serial number, she should be someone with a high status. Now that humans were about to enter the difficult sword era, he must not cause any trouble between humans and Freedom Metropolis. Ji Han's mind moved, he immediately had an idea, and a plan formed in his mind. Where am I? Did Loki catch me again? The first thing Misaka Mikoto did when she regained consciousness was to figure out her current situation. She soon realized that she was still free, but it was only temporary. This was because in front of her, there was a perverted man looking at her lecherously. His evil eyes were fixed on her chest. Misaka Mikoto then realized that she was still naked. Needless to say, the The person who took off her clothes was this perverted man. Ha ha ha, miss, don't be afraid. I don't want to hurt you. The man said with a perverted smile, I, Yoon Jonghae, am a gentleman. You were injured just now, I just wanted to help you heal. Yoon Jonghae, you're the pervert Yoon Jonghae. Misaka Mikoto immediately thought of Yuan-ku Yoon Jonghae. He belonged to the martial art alliance, which was called Yuan-ku Yuan-ku. He was the fourth of the four notorious villains, the vicious Yoon Jonghae. Initially, Misaka Mikoto was not interested in learning more about Yuan-ku. However, Yoon Jonghae was too famous and too evil. He was so evil that humans, Freedom Metropolis, and even Yuan-ku knew a lot about him. That was because Yoon Jonghae was an extremely detestable pervert, regardless of whether it was humans, Yuan-ku, or Freedom Metropolis. As long as it was a woman, he would use aphrodisiac on the other party, and that would be it. This person had defiled countless women in the past few hundred years. Many Freedom Metropolis had also been defiled by this animal. That was why Yoon Jonghae had always been on the wanted list of the Freedom Metropolis. However, Yoon Jonghae's Qinggong was too good. In addition to that, he had a pair of sharp eyes. He would not mess with any troublesome opponents. That was why he had been free for hundreds of years without being killed. Although the moonlight was dim and Misaka Mikoto could not see the person's face clearly. However, based on the person's figure and general appearance, it was undoubtedly the pervert Yoon Jonghae. You pervert, I want. Misaka Mikoto instinctively reached for her coin. However, when she touched her butt, she realized that her clothes had been taken off. The coin was nowhere to be found. Damn it. Misaka Mikoto could not find the coin. She could only use electricity to attack her opponent. However, just as she was about to use the electromagnetic force in her body, she felt a sharp pain in her chest. She spat out a mouthful of blood onto Yoon Jonghae's body. Half of Yoon Jonghae's clothes were stained red with blood. Ha 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 ha, don't be so agitated, little beauty. You're injured. Let big brother Yoon Jonghae comfort you. Yoon Jonghae extended his perverted hand to touch Misaka Mikoto's body. Little beauty, you don't know this, but as long as big brother Yoon Jonghae gives you a massage, you'll feel so good that you'll be able to fly to the sky and forget all the pain. Come, let your good big brother give you a kiss. No. Misaka Mikoto's heart was filled with despair. She would not have the courage to live if this pervert defiled her body. However, she was severely injured by Loki. Who else could save her from such a desperate situation? Who would have thought that the famous super electromagnetic gun, Freedom City's university-level freedom warrior, Misaka Mikoto would be defiled by a mere dragon-level pervert, Yuan-ku Yoon Jonghae? This would probably become the funniest joke of the year. No, the century. No one knew that there was a coin hidden in Misaka Mikoto's stomach. It was a coin that Misaka Mikoto had saved for suicide. Once she used her electromagnetic energy to shoot the coin in her body, it would trigger all the energy in her body and turn her into a terrifying electromagnetic bomb. By then, everything around her would be blown to smithereens. P.S. Regarding Misaka Mikoto, the author has only watched the 2 super electromagnetic gun animations. He did not read the original novel. If Misaka Mikoto's ability or other aspects are inconsistent with the original novel, don't blame the author. Just as Misaka Mikoto was about to perish together with Yoon Jonghae, Misaka Mikoto suddenly felt a metal object moving rapidly behind Yoon Jonghae. Due to electromagnetism, Misaka Mikoto was extremely sensitive to all metals and magnetism. She knew that it was a sharp sword that was heading toward Yoon Jonghae. Then, she saw Unica Crane running away from her in a panic, followed by the sounds of battle. She did not know who was the one who lost and ran away. At that time, Misaka Mikoto was overwhelmed by exhaustion. She closed her eyes again and vaguely saw a woman holding a wine gourd walking to her side with a strange smile on her face. This woman shouldn't be a pervert like Kuroko. That was Misaka Mikoto's last thought before she passed out. Chapter 449. You're the one who saved me. Misaka Mikoto opened her eyes and saw a beautiful lady in red taking care of her. She recalled the figure she saw before she fainted and thought that the lady in red was the one who saved her. Don't, I don't have the ability to save you. The one who saved you is someone else. I'm just here to take care of you. Song Ifei smiled. In the middle of the night, Ji Han had asked Ji Yun to throw this person into his tent. He said that he had saved her along the way, and that it was inconvenient for him to be a man. Song Ifei and Fleeting Time Lin were the only ones who could take care of her. Hence, Fleeting Ling and Song Ifei did not even close their eyes for the rest of the night. They spent all their energy trying to save the freeloader. The freeloader's body was coated with enough electricity to paralyze a person's heart. If it was not for the rubber raincoat and a few pairs of rubber gloves in Fleeting Ling's dimensional pocket, Song Ifei would have been electrocuted to death by Misaka Mikoto. In order to take care of this freelancer, the team decided not to set off and stayed in this temporary camp. It wasn't until noon that the freelancer slowly woke up. Miss Misaka, you're finally awake. The tent's curtain was pushed open, and Liunian Ling walked in with a bowl of porridge in her hand. Yuan Ku did not need food to survive as they could absorb the dimensional energy from the dimensional rift to sustain themselves. However, this did not affect their ability to replenish their energy through eating. Liu Nian knew that Yuan Ku did not have the energy to absorb the dimensional energy when they were weak. It was better for them to replenish their energy through eating. Moreover, as Yuan Yang in human form, eating was already their instinct. Being able to drink something warm at this time should make her body feel a little better. Thank you. Misaka Mikoto took the bowl of porridge and gulped it down. She could feel her body recovering a lot of energy. You know me. After Misaka Mikoto finished her porridge, she realized that the human girl had called out her name. Freelancers had always kept a low profile, and Misaka Mikoto was one of the most low-profile freelancers. She was confident that the number of humans who could recognize her could be counted on 2 hands. She did not expect the girl to recognize her. How could Ling forget the powerful university-level freedom warrior, the faith that leaps at her fingertips, and the fearless super-electromagnetic gun, Master Misaka Mikoto? Liunian Ling looked excited as if she had just met her idol. Miss Misaka, I grew up listening to stories about you and the Phantom Killer. If it wasn't for your photo at home, I wouldn't have been able to recognize you. Why do you have my photo in your house? Misaka Mikoto blushed. I don't remember leaving any pictures for anyone other than the fleeting calendar. That's right, I am Liunian Ling, the fleeting calendar is my ancestor. Liunian Ling said with a smile. You're the descendant of the fleeting calendar, the descendant of the fleeting family. Misaka Mikoto struggled to stand up. She was extremely excited. That's great. That's great, there's always a way out. I, Misaka Mikoto, risked my life to escape and met someone who can save everything. Listen to me, your Yuzhang City, no, the entire human race and us freelancers are in grave danger. We have to. Miss Misaka, you can't get too excited now. You need to stay calm. Liunian Ling and Song Ifei quickly pressed Misaka Mikoto onto the bed. Take your time and tell me what you want to say. Your health is more important. My health is nothing. Misaka Mikoto spat out a mouthful of blood as soon as she finished her sentence. Countless sparks appeared on the surface of her body. It was a sign that she was losing control of the electric current in her body. Even though Song Ifei was wearing rubber gloves, the sparks still made his heart tremble. Liunian Ling immediately kicked Song Ifei away to save him from being electrocuted. Miss Misaka, can't you control the electric current in your body? Liunian Ling asked anxiously. I'm sorry. Because of Loki's curse, it's very difficult for me to control the electric current. Misaka Mikoto said with a bitter smile. She would harm the people who had saved her even if she just lay there, let alone fight. Miss Misaka, do you still have the strength to put on this suit? The sparks on Misaka Mikoto's body made it impossible for humans to get close to her. If she did not find a way to deal with the electric current, she might not even be able to communicate normally. Liunian Ling had no choice but to take out a black bodysuit from her dimensional pocket and place it next to Misaka Mikoto. What's this? Misaka Mikoto furrowed her eyebrows when she saw the tiny skin-tight outfit. She did not know why the skin-tight outfit looked so embarrassing. This is the absolute insulation diving suit that we humans develop. Liuyan Ling said with a strange expression on her face. As long as you wear this suit, you can insulate yourself from 1 billion volts of electricity. As long as you wear this suit, you should be able to stop the electric current from going out of control and hurting people. Insulate yourself from 1 billion volts of electricity. Misaka Mikoto was stunned. It's not easy to make this kind of suit, right? Why are you guys interested in researching this kind of suit? This is specially developed for the purpose of getting through the Raging Thunder prison. Liuyan Ling's expression became even more strange when she mentioned the Raging Thunder prison. Or rather, her expression became even uglier. So that's how it is. Misaka Mikoto seemed to have understood something. She nodded and did not say anything else. The Raging Thunder prison was a taboo for the Liuyan family. It was no wonder that Liuyan Ling had such a strange expression when she took out the suit. Although Misaka Mikoto was severely injured, she could still move her limbs. She would be able to put on the bodysuit even if she was slightly slower. However, when Misaka Mikoto peeled off the rubber raincoat that covered her body, she was shocked to realize that her body was still naked. Forget it, I was probably saved by this young lady from the Liuyan family. It's not a big deal to let her see my naked body. Ife, get Guhan here. He was the one who saved the people, and he's the one who saved Yuzhong City. He has to make the final decision, Liuyan Ling said to Song Ife, who was numb from the electric shock. What did that mean? Was she not saved by this young lady from the Liuyan family? Judging from the name, this Guhan was a man? Misaka Mikoto suddenly felt a chill run down her spine. She realized that a man had seen her naked body. Bastet, what do you think we're doing? At a location 5 kilometers away from the campsite, Benos and the other two were grumbling and grumbling. However, Bastet had reverted to his human form. He was an extremely handsome man with a head full of white hair. The other two were still in their animal forms. They were a bear and a husky. Good news. The corner of Bastet's mouth curled up slightly. Who would have thought that this super handsome man in Fujoshi anime was actually Bastet's white-haired cat? Good my ass. Ice Eyes continued to grumble. Look at what we've been doing for the past few days. We ran all the way from Chongyang Mountain to here. It's more than 1,000 kilometers and we can't even catch our breath. We even had to stand guard for that D*mend Guhan. We haven't even slept more than 5 hours for the past few days. How are we supposed to live like this? Ice Eyes, you've been sleeping in the trial formation for 700 years. Haven't you had enough sleep? Bastet patted Ice Eye's head. These are all small matters. Don't take it to heart. It'll get better. Temph, I won't talk about it anymore. Let's talk about you, Bastet. Was the show you put on yesterday fun? Ice Eyes sneered. We're the 3 great deities. I can't believe we've fallen to the level of cooperating with a human to deceive a little girl. You were even beaten up by Yi Tian. How can you not take it to heart? So what? Didn't I benefit from it? Bastet smiled devilishly. Thanks to the super electromagnetic gun, I've regained my full strength. It's been 700 years. I've finally seen my true self again. That's right. Great cat goddess, Bastet the god of wisdom. If you can maintain this form for a little longer. As soon as Ice Eye's voice fell, Bastet's incomparably handsome human form twisted and turned back into a white cat. It turned out that the Yunzhong crane who teased Misaka Mikoto last night was not the real Yunzhong crane. Instead, it was Bastet in disguise. In order for Bastet to transform into Yunzhong crane, Guhan had no choice but to completely remove the seal on Bastet's godhead, allowing him to return to his most powerful deity form. Only in this form would Bastet be able to change his appearance at will. However, Guhan was careful. The seal would not be permanent. It would only last for half a day. After half a day, the seal would once again seal Bastet's godhead. Bastet would then return to his cat form. Bastet, how long do you think we'll have to live like this? I don't want to live another day like this. Ice Eyes, this is a decision made by the 3 of us. There's no room for regrets. Bastet licked his meaty palms. Life is like a show. Even we deities have to rely on our acting skills to survive. Only by staying by his side will we have a chance to welcome the new life of this world. Just bear with it for a few more decades. Mr. Guhan, thank you. Misaka Mikoto bowed deeply at Guhan to express her gratitude to Guhan for saving her life. It would have been better if she was not wearing this insulating bodysuit. Misaka Mikoto looked like she was wearing a full-body swimsuit. The bodysuit perfectly outlined the curves of her body. Chapter 450. Perhaps Misaka Mikoto felt that her clothes were too embarrassing. She decided to cover herself with a blanket, leaving only her head exposed. Ms. Misaka, are you feeling better? Can you answer some of our questions? As you can guess, we're filled with questions right now. Guhan asked with concern. It's all right. It's fine to answer some questions. Moreover, I have something important to tell all of you. Misaka Mikoto paused for a while and blushed. But before that, I'd like to ask Mr. Guhan a question. Was I brought back by Mr. Guhan? Of course not. Guhan smiled and shook his head. My sword mistress, Etienne, saved you. She reported that your clothes were destroyed by Yuan Ku, so I asked her to bring you to Ling and the others' tent. Don't worry, I hid far away and didn't look at them at all. Phew. Misaka Mikoto let out a long sigh of relief. Her blushing face made her look extremely adorable. If she knew that her clothes were not destroyed by Yun Zhonghe but by Guhan, she would have electrocuted Guhan with the super railgun. By the way, I found these things at the place where I found you. I'm not sure if they belong to you, Ms. Misaka. Ji Han took out the badge, student ID, and coins that he found on Misaka Mikoto and placed them in front of Misaka Mikoto. However, he only took 2 coins. The other 3 coins were kept by Ji Han. Guhan was not interested in Misaka Mikoto's coins, but it was very difficult to find coins scattered in the forest. It was normal to find some of them. If he found all of them, it would raise suspicions. Of course, Guhan did not know that Misaka Mikoto's intelligence was not high enough to notice these problems. Guhan was just trying to be smart. Thank you very much. These things are very important to me. I thought I would never find them again. Misaka Mikoto bowed at Guhan again and kept the things as if they were treasures. You don't have to thank me, Ms. Misaka. You said that you have something important to tell us. What is it? You can tell us now. Guhan finally asked the question that he wanted to ask the most. Yes. This is a matter of life and death for all of you. Mr. Ji Han, I wonder if you can contact the Yuzhong City Sword Committee now? If you can, please let me talk to your sword god. Misaka Mikoto's expression instantly became anxious. Ji Han smiled bitterly. He clicked on his personal terminal and projected the signal search interface of his personal terminal. A radar scan image spun for a long time before a message popped up. No signal. Please leave this area and try again. As you can see, the signal here is almost 0. We can't contact Yuzhong City at all. Guhan shook his head. Logically speaking, there should be weak electromagnetic signals in this area. We can't use large amounts of data to communicate, but we should be able to send a few words. However, since Yeyang Fortress has been occupied, the signal amplification device there is probably gone as well. That's why there is no signal here. That's right. Every time Yuan Ku launches a major attack, he would use all sorts of methods to weaken the signal in the wilderness. I'm guessing that unless we can get within 100 kilometers of Yuzhong City, we won't be able to contact Yuzhong City at all, Liuonian Ling added. However, there was actually another way to contact Yuzhong City. That was to communicate with Yuzhong City through the dimensional network of other base cities. The dimensional network converted signals into dimensional waves and sent them into the dimensional space. Then, through special receiving equipment, the dimensional waves could be received from the dimensional space in another location. It was an extremely fast method of communication. Moreover, Yuan Ku could not block such communication. That was also the reason why Sword Maiden Online could connect to other cities without any delay. However, the equipment required for the dimensional network was extremely complicated. It took up more than a square kilometer, and each base city only had one such piece of equipment. Therefore, The network could only be used in the base city. It was impossible to use it outside the base city. That means the only way for us to contact Yuzhong City is to get within 100 kilometers of Yuzhong City, Guhan concluded. He then asked curiously, "What's going on? Can't we find out?" "Of course not." Misaka Mikoto shook her head. "I just want to tell Yuzhong City to immediately send troops to attack Mount Mailing and take it back. Otherwise, if Rocky achieves his goal and obtains that thing, I'm afraid the entire Yuzhong City will be turned into a pile of dust in an instant." Turned into a pile of dust in an instant? Isn't that a little too much? Song Ifei's mouth was wide open. Disbelief was written all over his face. Even if Yuzhong City does not have Gendi's protection, we still have the dimensional wall to protect us. We also have 2 immortal sword tier seniors and more than 10 spiritual sword tier elites. It's impossible for them to be killed in an instant. Even if they have Hong tier or even desolate tier Yuan Ku, they can still hold on for a while. I'm not exaggerating. Miss Ifei, you might not know about it. But Miss Ling, you must have heard of the creation divinity. Song Ifei and Guhan had never heard of the term that Misaka Mikoto mentioned. However, Liunian Ling definitely knew about it. When she heard the term, dozens of expressions flashed across her face within a second. All of them looked terrible. That's impossible. The creation divinity has been banished to the eternal barren dimension by our ancestors. It's impossible for it to appear in this world again. Liunian Ling's voice was trembling. As the descendant of the Liunian family, Liunian Ling was avoiding the question. Everyone thought that it would never appear again. However, it's in Loki's hands now. I saw it with my own eyes. There's no mistake. I was there during the battle 1,000 years ago, and I saw it being banished by the fleeting year calendar with my own eyes. When I first heard the news, I was even more reluctant to believe it than you are. However, it really did appear, and I can't be wrong about it. The power of the Creator's divinity and the energy waves are not something that can be faked. Misaka Mikoto's words rendered fleeting time Rin speechless. Her understanding of the creation divinity was only from the information passed down in her family. However, Misaka Mikoto was indeed someone who lived through that era. Her words were undeniable evidence. Can I ask, what is the creation divinity that you're talking about? Why have we never heard of it before? Song Ifei interrupted timidly. Her words were Guhan's thoughts. Guhan also wanted to know what the creation divinity was. I'm sure all of you know about the Mountain City War that the Liunian family is most proud of. Liunian Ling let out a long sigh. During the Mountain City War, everyone thought that Kanzu wanted to kill the 3 desolate level Yuan Ku that posed the greatest threat to mankind before he died. Little did they know that our ancestors started the Mountain City War to destroy the creation divinity. We don't know how the creation divinity came about. However, there's a legend among all the primitive level Yuan Ku. Whoever can absorb the power of the creation divinity will be able to surpass the limits of the desolate level Yuan Ku and become the unprecedented super Yuan Ku that can easily crush Gendi. Originally, the great ancestor was quite happy because the Yuan Shun, who were originally united, had split up into several factions for the sake of this creation divine spark and began to kill each other. This gave humans a chance to breathe and rebuild the base city. However, the 3 desolate level Yuan Ku came to a consensus and started researching the power of the creation divinity. They planned to launch an all-out war against mankind after they achieved a breakthrough. When our ancestors found out about this, they realized that things were not going well. He led the human army and started attacking the 3 desolate level Yuan Ku bases. I won't go into the beginning of the battle. The history books are very comprehensive. There have been dozens of TV dramas and movies about the Mountain City War. The general process of the battle is similar to the history books. Mankind paid a terrible price. The lives of 5 deity sword wielders were used to clear the entire mountain city. They started the final attack on the 3 desolate level Yuan Ku's residence, Goose Ridge Park. Guhan, Ifei, do you remember what the history books said about this final battle? Liunian Ling asked. How can I not know? Back then, I watched the TV series Legend of the Heroes and Daughters of Mountain City several times. Let me think about it. Song Ifei touched his lips. I remember it said that Master Kanzu defeated Ling and suppressed 3 desolate level Yuan Ku single-handedly. In the end, the 3 desolate level Yuan Ku became desperate and self-destructed to take revenge on the humans who besieged Mountain City. The humans couldn't dodge in time. 2/3 of the sword wielders died there. Master Kanzu, who was at the center of the explosion, disappeared after the explosion. The 3 desolate level Yuan Ku were all extremely powerful. Although our ancestors could suppress them, they couldn't kill them. If they wanted to escape, even our ancestors couldn't stop them. If their lives weren't in danger, why would these desolate level Yuan Ku be willing to self-destruct? Fleeting Lin sneered. It said that they had studied the Creator's divinity to the extent that they could even control a portion of the Creator's divinity's power. They planned to use the power of the Creator's divinity to attack their ancestor. Unfortunately, these 3 pieces of trash thought themselves clever and accidentally detonated the creation divinity's power. This power was so powerful that the 3 desolate level Yuan Ku closest to the creation divinity were immediately turned into a pile of ashes. The ancestors wanted to use their own power to protect the sword wielders in Mountain City. Although they managed to protect 1/3 of the sword wielders, the ancestor's body was shattered and was about to die. The ancestors, who were afraid of the creation divinity's power, used the last of their power to banish the creation divinity into the desolate dimension. When their power was completely exhausted, the ancestors were sucked into the large dimensional rift that opened when they were banished. In the end, no one saw the ancestors again. No wonder people said that Kanzu didn't die but went to another dimension. So this is the reason. After hearing such a secret story, Guhan couldn't help but sigh. History was indeed a little girl who could be dressed up by others. Chapter 451. According to Gendi's analysis, it was impossible for the creation divinity to help the desolate level Yuan Ku break through the limit. The logic of the desolate level Yuan Ku was completely reversed. Controlling the power in it doesn't mean breaking through the desolate level limit, but breaking through the desolate level limit is the only way to control the power in it. Anyone, whether it's a human or a Yuan Ku, trying to obtain the power in the creation divinity will only result in an explosion. Liuyan Ling's face turned darker as she spoke. If Ms. Misaka is right, the creation divinity has indeed returned to this world. If Loki tries to trigger the power in it, it'll be like what happened in Shancheng. 3 desolate level Yuan Ku died on the spot, and everything within a 300-kilometer radius of Shancheng was razed to the ground. Liuyan Ling shuddered as she said, if this power is triggered in Yuzhang City, it'll turn into dust in an instant. Even Gendi won't be able to stop it. Dust. Guhan's body trembled as he recalled the name. No, I won't allow it. I won't allow Yuzhang City, where I was born and raised, to be turned into dust. At that moment, Guhan had the urge to rush to Yuzhang City and tell his master about the conspiracy so that he could stop Loki from triggering the power of the creation divinity. However, Guhan regained his composure. He analyzed what Liuyan Ling had just said and realized that there were a few things that didn't make sense. Ling, didn't you say that even the desolate level Yuan Ku had to study the power of the creation divinity for a long time to trigger it? Loki is only a Yun level Yuan Ku. Where did he get the ability to trigger the power of the creation divinity? Guhan asked the first question in his mind. No, triggering is different from controlling it. Controlling it requires absolute power, but triggering it only requires a suitable medium. Liuyan Ling paused. It's like a nuclear bomb. Only the best scientists can truly understand the structure of a nuclear bomb and create one. However, to release this nuclear bomb, one only needs to press a button and enter the password. Even a 3-year-old child can do it easily. One of the 3 desolate level Yuan Ku is Ymir, the ancestor of the frost giants from the Temple of the West. He is Odin and Loki's grandfather, the strongest person in Norse mythology. He must have passed on his research on the creation divinity to Odin and Loki. That's how Loki mastered the method to trigger the creation divinity. Liuyan Ling analyzed. P.S. In Orthodox Norse mythology, Odin and Loki are sworn brothers. In terms of seniority, Loki's father is the son of Odin's uncle, Mimir's son. In other words, Loki is actually one generation younger than Odin. Odin should actually be Loki's uncle. However, Norse mythology has always been a messy place, so there is no need to pay attention to these details. Also, it is worth mentioning that although Ymir is Odin's grandfather, the giants and the gods of Odin are natural enemies. In the myth, Ymir was killed by Odin and the gods, and the rest of the giants were exiled. Therefore, there is a deep hatred between the two sides. Here is a special reminder to not mislead my dear readers. So, how can we trigger the medium of the creation divinity? Ms. Misaka, you asked Yuzhang City to send troops to reclaim Mai Ling Mountain. Could it be that the medium of the creation divinity is in Mai Ling Mountain? Guhan continued to ask. Mr. Jiyu Han, you're really too smart. That's right, the reason why Rocky attacked the Mai Ling mountain range and I want you to take it back is because there's a medium in the Mai Ling mountain range that can trigger the creator's godhead. Misaka Mikoto quickly said, when I was at Fort Yuyang, I met Medusa who had disappeared for hundreds of years. Medusa told me that she found an Emperor-type dimensional crystal in the core of Mai Ling Mountain. When Loki heard about the Emperor-type, he immediately decided to start the war. I'm guessing that the medium that can trigger the creation divinity is this Emperor-type dimensional crystal. It was Medusa. It was an Emperor-type. Guhan did not know what to say when he heard the news. It turned out that he was the cause of everything. Guhan could not help but feel that it was ridiculous. Ms. Misaka, I remember Ling said that the divinity killed the 3 desolate level Yuan Ku on the spot. If Loki triggered the power of the creation divinity, wouldn't he be killed on the spot? I heard that Loki is the most cunning deity in the Western Temple. He would never sacrifice his life just to destroy Yuzhang City. Guhan put aside the matter of Medusa and continued to raise his doubts. According to Half-Day Gendi's memory, the divinity will not explode on the spot after it's triggered. There will be a waiting period of about 20 seconds. With Loki's ability, 20 seconds is more than enough for him to escape from the lethal zone. Misaka Mikoto was not the one who answered the question, but Liuonian Ling, the 3 desolate level Yuan Ku were too stupid. They thought that the reason the divinity did not explode was because they had control over the power. Otherwise, they would not have been killed by the explosion. That's right. My friend, the abnormal sunspot, is still in their hands. As long as the abnormal sunspot's teleportation ability is still there, not only will Loki be fine, but his main force will also be able to escape Yuzhang City with the help of Sunspot. This is a plot that Loki has long planned. Misaka Mikoto punched the ground angrily. Even though she was wearing an insulated kurumizu, there were still sparks coming out of her collar. One could see how angry Misaka Mikoto was. They have Blackie under their control. Compared to Misaka Mikoto, the super electromagnetic gun, who kept a low profile, the perverted Kuroko, the Space Lord, was a rather famous freelancer among the humans. Her harassment of the Sword Maidens had put her on the blacklist of every city. It was precisely because of this fame that humans were extremely familiar with Hazy's abilities. Naturally, they were also very familiar with her unparalleled large-scale teleportation ability. If Blackie was under Loki's control, with the help of Blackie's teleportation ability, Yuzhang City would be doomed. It's all because of me. The sparks on Misaka Mikoto's body became even more intense. If I hadn't fallen for Loki's trap and been captured by them, Kuroko wouldn't have been threatened by them. Now, he's under Loki's control. Instead, I, the culprit, managed to escape. Misaka Mikoto's intermittent narration gave Guhan a rough idea of what had happened to Misaka Mikoto. Misaka Mikoto had been living a simple and happy life with her friends in Liberty City for the past few hundred years. However, last month, she suddenly received news that her younger sister had come to this world. Misaka Mikoto only had friends but no family. When she heard that her younger sister had appeared, she immediately packed up and went out alone to look for her sister. She wanted to bring her back to Liberty City so that she would not become a blood-soaked Yuan Ku. In the end, she would either end up killing pitiful humans or dying in the hands of human swordsmen. Misaka Mikoto followed the clues. Just when she thought that she had found her younger sister, she suddenly fell into Loki's trap. Loki and the other 3 universe-level Yuan-Ku surrounded her. Misaka Mikoto was quickly defeated and captured by Loki. It turned out that everything was Loki's scheme. The clues about Misaka Mikoto's younger sister were fake news that Loki had released. His purpose was to lure her into his trap and use her as a bargaining chip to threaten her friends. As expected, when Misaka Mikoto's friends found out that she had been captured, they were helpless. Under Loki's coercion, they used their teleportation ability to help Loki evade the detection of the humans. They ambushed Fort Yuyang and launched a large-scale attack on the entire Yuzhang city. Perhaps Loki felt that victory was within his grasp. He had loosened his control over Misaka Mikoto. He did not even hide some of his plans from Misaka Mikoto. For example, Loki was the one who told Misaka Mikoto about the creator's divinity. In Loki's eyes, Misaka Mikoto was not even a threat. As a result, Misaka Mikoto took advantage of the time when Loki went out to attack. At the cost of damaging her electromagnetic model, she forcefully broke through the seal that Loki placed on her and escaped from Fort Yuyang. However, Loki's pursuers soon caught up to her. The chase went on for 3 or 4 days before Misaka Mikoto fainted due to her severe injuries. When she woke up, she saw the detestable pervert, Yunzhong Crane. Everyone knew what happened after that. "I'm sorry. Yuzhang City is in danger because of me. If I wasn't captured, Heise wouldn't have been threatened and Fort Yuyang wouldn't have fallen so easily." Misaka Mikoto sounded very emotional. "It's all my fault. I was too stupid. I was deceived by others in my original world. I didn't expect it to be the same in this world. No, it's none of your business. Don't take it to heart." Guhan let out a long sigh. As long as Loki is determined to destroy Yuzhang City, he will find another way to attack Fort Yuyang even without you. Fort Yuyang is not an impregnable place. It has been attacked more than 20 times in history. Don't take it to heart. Just focus on recovering. Thank you. Misaka Mikoto nodded. This happened because of me. This time, even if I have to break the contract with Yuan-Ku and the humans, I will destroy Loki. I swear on my LV6 super electromagnetic gun. Ji Han was worried about Loki when he saw the anger on Misaka Mikoto's face. That guy is going to be in big trouble. Chapter 452. On the road to Yuzhang City, a Yang Huang 3008 hovercraft was speeding down the road. However, compared to before, there was one less person in the trunk of the hovercraft. Guhan had temporarily left the team, leaving only Liuyan Ling to bring Song Yifei and Yi Wenjun back to Yuzhang City. "We'll split up now. Ling, bring Yifei and Wenjun back to Yuzhang City first. Report to my master and Yifei's master about the Mai Ling mountain range. I'll leave it to you." Liuyan Ling recalled what Guhan had told her before they parted ways. Misaka Mikoto was severely injured and had to go to a special place to recuperate. There were many Yuan-Ku in that place. With Misaka Mikoto's current condition, she might not even be able to defeat the weakest mouse Yuan-Ku, let alone break into Yuan-Ku's lair to recuperate. Someone had to protect Misaka Mikoto as they headed to that place. However, Yuzhang City was in a critical situation. They had to report the news of Loki and the creator's divinity as soon as possible. After much consideration, Guhan decided to split up. He would protect Misaka Mikoto as she recuperated while Liuyan Ling would lead the team back to Yuzhang City. Initially, Liuyan Ling wanted to go with Guhan. However, when Guhan said, "I'll only be at ease if I leave Yifei and the rest to you," Liuyan Ling nodded helplessly. Indeed, they would definitely be intercepted by many Yuan-Ku on their way back to Yuzhang City. Without Liuyan Ling's protection, Song Yifei and the rest would most likely be in danger. When they reached the outskirts of Yuzhang City, there were already many Yuan-Ku along the way. Although most of them could not keep up with the hovercraft's speed and could only watch, there were still quite a number of extremely fast Yuan-Ku chasing after the hovercraft, attempting to attack Liuyan Ling and the rest. Faced with such ungrateful Yuan-Ku, Liuyan Ling immediately released 10 sword rays and sent those ungrateful Yuan-Ku back into the dimensional whirlpool. They could only hover in the hovercraft and could not stop. Liuyan Ling would not be able to enjoy the sword rays in the dimensional whirlpool. However, as they got closer and closer to Yuzhang City, there were more and more Yuan Ku blocking the road. There were even groups of Yuan Ku blocking the road, intercepting all human forces that attempted to get close to Yuzhang City. There were just too many Yuan Ku. Although Liuyan Ling's billion sword technique was unparalleled, it inevitably felt a little powerless against so many Yuan Ku. At this time, Yi Wenjun's role suddenly exploded, or rather, his driving skills suddenly exploded. Under Yi Wenjun's driving, the Yanghuang 3008 began to accelerate crazily from its original speed of 60 km per hour to 120 km per hour. What was even crazier was that in order to avoid the blockade on the main road, Yi Wenjun actually drove the hovercraft into the forest. What did it mean to drive a hovercraft at 120 km per hour in the forest? To give a simple example, it was the same concept as driving at 120 km per hour in a metropolis like Beijing or Shanghai during rush hour. Many times, Yi Wenjun actually turned the hovercraft sideways and rushed between two tall trees that were less than a meter apart. With Yi Wenjun's burst of speed, the team finally succeeded in leaving the clingy Yuan Ku behind. They were getting closer and closer to Yuzhang City. Ling, I see a fortress. We're very close to Yuzhang City, Song Yifei suddenly said excitedly. Her finger pointed to a small castle-like dimensional concrete defensive structure not far away. This was a fortress used by Yuzhang City to monitor the surrounding environment. Such a fortress would only be built within 300 kilometers of Yuzhang City. Since Song Yifei saw this fortress, it meant that they were currently within 300 kilometers of Yuzhang City. Should we go take a look at that fortress? There might be humans inside, Song Yifei suggested. That's impossible. Liuyan Ling shook her head. According to the scan, there are hundreds of Yuan Ku in the vicinity who are not hiding. This means that this area has been abandoned by Yuzhang City. The people inside the fortress have either retreated or died. There shouldn't be anyone inside. But Ling, look, there's smoke coming out of there. Hearing Song Yifei's words, Liuyan Ling looked in the direction of the fortress. With just one glance, her expression changed. Not good, there's a battle there. I don't know if it's a sword bearer. We have to go take a look. Following Liuyan Ling's order, Yi Wenjun immediately changed the direction of the hovercraft and drove towards the fortress. According to the construction guidelines of Yuzhang City's fortress, all the trees within a kilometer of the fortress must be cut down to maintain a sufficient field of vision to monitor the surroundings. This was to prevent Yuan Ku from sneaking up to the fortress through the forest. Therefore, when the hovercraft passed through the forest and appeared beside the fortress, the fierce battle was reflected in Liuyan Ling and Song Yifei's eyes. It was a despicable gang fight. There were more than 10 Yuan Ku surrounding a human and attacking him. That human was actually a sword master. He was fighting a dozen Yuan Kus with a sword mistress. For a moment, he was in a stalemate. This person's swordsmanship is not bad. Even among the sword masters, he's above average. Liuyan Ling observed carefully for more than 10 seconds and made such a judgment. But I'm afraid he won't be able to hold on for long. I see his wrist trembling uncontrollably every time he fights with his opponent. This is a sign that he's running out of stamina. If this goes on, he'll lose due to lack of stamina. We have to save him immediately. But why does this guy look so familiar? I feel like I've seen him somewhere before. Suddenly, Liuyan Ling said. Of course you'll find him familiar. After all, you met him a few days ago. Song Yifei snorted. This is the Ku Rokin who ran away before us. Doesn't he have eyes in the sky? Why is he in such a sorry state now? It turned out that the person being attacked by Yuan Ku was none other than Ku Rokin. Although the arrogant Ku Rokin did not want to admit it, at this point in the fight, he had a vague feeling that he was going to lose. He did not have Yi Wenjun's driving skills, which allowed him to travel at top speed in the forest. He could only use his hovercraft to force his way through the path blocked by Yuan Ku. After breaking through a few blockades, Ku Rokin's hovercraft was destroyed by Yuan Ku. Ku Rokin had no choice but to abandon the hovercraft and use his sword to force his way through the encirclement of Yuan Ku. Before he met the encirclement of Yuan Ku, Ku Rokin had already lost count of how many Yuan Ku he had killed. Maybe 100, maybe 200. In short, before Ku Rokin was surrounded by the group of Yuan Ku, he was already exhausted. Otherwise, the group of soul-class skeleton kings would not have left Ku Rokin with only the strength to defend himself. Am I going to die here? When a skeleton king's bone blade landed on Ku Rokin's personal shield, it completely shattered the already shaky personal shield. This thought suddenly appeared in Ku Rokin's mind. Now that his personal shield was gone, every slash would land on his body until he bled to death, or his head would be directly chopped off by Yuan Ku. Poochie. The sound of a blade cutting into flesh could be heard. Once again, the skeleton king found an opening and slashed at Ku Rokin's waist. A bone-deep pain instantly caused Ku Rokin's face to instantly turn pale. The injury caused Ku Rokin to go a little crazy. He even began to ignore the slashes coming at him, giving up on defense in exchange for a crazy attack. A skeleton king's skull was pierced by Ku Rokin's sword. The soul fire in the skull flickered for a moment before extinguishing. Without the soul fire, the skeleton king's skull lost its support and directly turned into a pile of debris, which was absorbed by the dimensional vortex. Needless to say, a crazy Ku Rokin's combat power was indeed very terrifying. In just a few minutes, he had already killed 4 to 5 soul-rank Yuan Ku skeleton kings. Even other sword-bearers at their peak could not do this, let alone Ku Rokin, who was completely exhausted. From this point alone, it could be seen that Ku Rokin was indeed very strong. He was a top sword-bearer among the sword-bearers, possibly even stronger than Lionheart. If Ku Rokin had a little more stamina, then Ku Rokin would definitely be able to sweep these Yuan Ku skeleton kings. Unfortunately, Ku Rokin could no longer squeeze out any more stamina. The crazy explosion from before had used up the last bit of energy in his body. Now, Ku Rokin could only feel that every muscle in his body had become as heavy as 1,000 pounds. He could not even lift his hand. How could the skeleton kings let go of such an opportunity? They raised their swords, and 5 fresh wounds appeared on Ku Rokin's back. Red and white flesh grew out from the wounds, revealing his grayish-white spine. Fresh blood flowed freely, and the ground instantly became a pool of blood. I can't fall. Ku Rokin stabbed the sword in his hand into the ground, using the strength of the sword to support his body so that he would not fall. He was a hero. Even if he died, he would die standing. Should I call that old man to save me? At the moment when death was about to befall him, Zhu Elvrond suddenly thought of his father, Zhu Wudao's face. No, perhaps to him, he will only be truly happy when I die. If that's the case, then I shall die. This world, it's too painful. Ku Rokin closed his eyes and prepared to accept his death. At that moment, almost all the skeleton kings raised their swords at the same time. They only had one target, and that was Ku Rokin's neck. 1 slash in half, 1 slash of yin and yang. At that moment, countless swords flashed by Ku Rokin, just like the fireworks when he was 8 years old. Chapter 453. Can your body still take it? Under a big tree, Misaka Mikoto was resting while leaning against the tree. Jiyu Han was cooking a pot of porridge. Next to the pot were poor beggar and Jiyu Yun, who were holding a spoon in his left hand and a bowl in his right. They were staring at the pot of porridge with sparkling eyes. Due to the miscalculation of the time they were going to leave this time and a few accidents, the red braised pork that Wen Maiyun had prepared for half a month had already been eaten. The rest of the food had also been swept clean. Now, the only food that Jiyu Han could give to poor beggar and the others were the dozens of bags of rice and 2 big jars of dried carrots in his dimensional pocket. Guhan did not know how to cook and had no interest in learning how to cook. He did not even know how to cook. Guhan, who could calculate all kinds of derivatives and higher-order functions in his mind, could not even cook with water. If there was too little water, the rice would be uncooked. If there was too much water, it would turn into porridge. In the end, Guhan decided to add less rice and more water. Damn it, Guhan could not possibly make a mistake when cooking porridge. In the beginning, Qingpin did not like the porridge that had no meat, and Ji Yun did not like the porridge that had no fish and only some dried carrots on top. However, they could not resist the hunger in their stomachs and had no choice but to force themselves to eat a little. As a result, the more they ate, the more addicted they became, especially when the porridge was mixed with a few crispy and refreshing dried carrots. The two adorable lollis could not stop eating. Every time Guhan started cooking porridge, the two of them would become obedient babies who loved to eat. They would wait in front of the big pot obediently, ready to eat dozens of bowls of fragrant porridge. It was worth mentioning that about 90% of the bowls were eaten by Qingpin. Our cute Ji Yun would at most eat 5 to 6 bowls. She was a cute lady. Guhan took out 4 bowls from his dimensional pocket. These bowls were specially bought for Qingpin. They were all shaped like cute little animals. Guhan took out a panda bowl and filled it with porridge before handing it to the impatient Qingpin. The panda bowl was exclusive to Qingpin. Other than Qingpin, no one else could use it. There was also a penguin bowl for Ji Yun. Ji Yun did not mind having her own bowl and chopsticks, so Guhan would give her a random bowl every time. If you don't have enough, fill it up yourself. After saying that, Guhan filled up the remaining 2 bowls and brought them to Misaka Mikoto, who was resting against the tree. He passed one of the bowls to her and said dryly, "Eat up." The remaining bowl was naturally Guhan's. Guhan shoved a few mouthfuls of porridge into his mouth and suddenly felt a burning gaze on him. When Guhan looked up, he realized that the owner of the burning gaze was Misaka Mikoto. She was looking at him with her eyes shining. Guhan could even see a gorilla. Oh, no, stars in her eyes. What's wrong? Did I do something wrong? Ji Yuhan was startled. He wondered if there was a grain of rice on the corner of his mouth that attracted her attention. However, he realized that Misaka Mikoto was not looking at him. She was looking at the bowl in his hand. "Oh, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." Misaka Mikoto finally reacted. She quickly lowered her head, buried her face in the bowl, and poured the porridge into her mouth. Judging by the speed at which she ate, she probably could not even taste the food. Guhan looked at his bowl. It looked like a frog. There was nothing special about it. He could not understand what Misaka Mikoto was thinking. After Misaka Mikoto finished eating the porridge, Guhan said, "Ms. Misaka, the Nanjing ruins are just ahead of us. Are you sure that we have to go to Rainflower Terrace to heal your injury?" "Yes." Misaka Mikoto nodded. "My body became like this because I lost control of the electromagnetism in my body. I have to rely on external forces to build the electromagnetism model in my body. This is not the first time I've encountered this situation. The last time I was cured was at Rainflower Terrace in Nanjing. Therefore, I'm very sure that we have to go to Rainflower Terrace." "I understand now." Guhan let out a long sigh and said, "Rainflower Terrace is located at the junction of 2 districts of the ancient Nanjing city. It's surrounded by the ruins of Nanjing city before the apocalypse. If we want to reach there, we have to go through the ruins of the ancient Nanjing city. According to the information I've read on the internet, half of the districts of the ancient Nanjing city are abandoned. There are no humans or Yuan-ku. However, the other half is in the city center of Nanjing, Black Tortoise District, Qinhuai District, Jianya District, and Rainflower Terrace District. These 4 districts are occupied by a large group of Yuan-ku zombies." Guhan paused for a while. According to the information left behind by the seniors, this group of Yuan-ku zombies came to this world more than 100 years ago. They fought in Black Tortoise District for a while before they were forced out by the endless stream of zombies. They did not fully investigate the situation in this district. However, according to their battle information, this group of zombies already has a dragon-level Yuan-ku. This is only the situation in one district. I suspect that there are more advanced dragon-level and first-level Yuan-ku zombies here. Guhan's expression was very serious. His current combat strength could only defeat a dragon-level Yuan-ku. He might be able to fight a dragon-level Yuan-ku, but a first-level Yuan-ku could only run for his life. He was able to defeat Icei's in the trial array only because Icei's was naturally restrained by him. In addition, she was emotionally affected by him and neglected to defend against his weakness, which was why she was knocked unconscious. If he were to do it again, Ji Yuhan was sure that the one who would be defeated would not be Aisai's, but himself. Therefore, Gu Han was hesitant about entering Nanjing. If he encountered a first-level Yuan Ku, he would definitely lose. Gu Han was not afraid. With the green onion stone, Gu Han could retreat to the safety of the training formation at any time. However, he could not bring Misaka Mikoto back. If Misaka Mikoto died here, Yuzhong City would lose a strong ally. I have to go to Rainflower Terrace, Misaka Mikoto pleaded. I don't want to be a burden. Alright, I understand. You have to listen to my orders. Gu Han took a deep breath. In fact, he had never thought of retreating. When he decided to escort Misaka Mikoto here for treatment, Gu Han was already confident that he would win. For the sake of Yuzhong City, he had to win. I owe you a favor. Ku Rokin walked out of the medical chamber and walked in front of Liuonian Ling. He said to Liuonian Ling coldly. It was as if Liuonian Ling was extremely lucky to earn a favor from him. It could not be helped. Teenagers were all like that. Please don't take it to heart. Zhu Luren's injuries looked very terrifying. His skin and flesh were torn, and even his bones were exposed. However, this was actually just a flesh wound. To the medical chamber, flesh wounds were the easiest to heal. In just 10 minutes or so, Ku Rokin's body had fully recovered. Unfortunately, the medical chamber could not restore Ku Rokin's stamina and sword essence. Ku Rokin could only recover them with time. We're both swordsmen. I won't leave you in the lurch, Liuonian Ling said calmly. It was as if saving Ku Rokin was no different than saving a kitten or a puppy. Ku Rokin was used to others' coldness and indifference toward him. However, when he heard Liuonian Ling saying the same thing, he felt a surge of anger and stubbornness in his heart. He gave Liuonian Ling a fist salute. I'll definitely return the favor. I'm leaving now. See you again. After saying that, Ku Rokin dragged his heavy legs toward Yuzhong City. Wait, you can't go. Before Ku Rokin could take a few steps, Liuonian Ling stood in front of him and blocked Ku Rokin's way. You're just going to die if you keep going like this. I don't want to save a dead person after spending so much effort. I can walk by myself. My strength alone is enough. As long as I'm alive, I can save the whole world. Ku Rokin's childish personality came out again. As a childish teenager, even if his limbs were crippled, he still wanted to bear all the burden by himself. This was a common practice. Pa. Liuonian Ling struck Ku Rokin's limbs with her sword. Then, Ku Rokin felt the meridians in his limbs being sealed by a wave of sword chi. He could no longer control his body and fell to the ground like a puddle of mud. This was a secret skill of the Liuonian family. It could seal the meridians of a human or a human Yuan Ku through sword chi, causing the human to lose control of his body. It was just like the ancient martial arts acupuncture. However, this secret skill could not be used by just anyone. One had to hit 4 acupuncture points at the same time, and their strength had to be 1 level higher than the opponent to be able to do it. If not for the fact that the sword essence in Ku Rokin's body had been used up, Liuonian Ling would not have been able to hit him. Liuonian Ling grabbed the clothes on Ku Rokin's back, lifted him up, and threw him into the trunk of the Yanghuang 3008. Then, she got into the car calmly and squeezed with Song Yifei. Let's go back to Yuzhong City. Why do you care about me? I can do anything on my own. I don't need you to pity me. Zhu Luren, whose limbs were restrained, still shouted there, unwilling to give up. His Chinibya heart had never been extinguished. Shut up. If Gu Han was here, he would not talk nonsense with me. He would think of a way to break through my sword chi. Liuonian Ling said disdainfully. Don't compare that lucky guy to me. He's not worthy. Ku Rokin said proudly. Ku Rokin always thought that Gu Han was only lucky. How could he, Gu Han, be compared to Ku Rokin? There was no comparison at all. She slapped Ku Rokin's face, stunning Ku Rokin. To tell you the truth, if it wasn't for your father, who would have saved you? Liuonian Ling laughed coldly. I didn't save you, but Sword Immortal Baiju's son. Don't you understand that? Ku Rokin's face turned ashen. He did not say a word until they returned to Yuzhong City. Chapter 454. Puku District, the ruins of Nanjing. A cloud of dust flew through the ruins and finally stopped on the side of a large river, revealing its original appearance in the smoke. It was a handsome maglev motorcycle. Just like the Yang Huang 3008, it was also the latest maglev motorcycle. It was a gift from Liuanian Ling to Guhan when he parted ways with Liuanian Ling. Otherwise, Guhan would not have had the means of transportation to Nanjing city ruins, which was hundreds of kilometers away. The maglev motorcycle was not much slower than a hovercraft. It was much more agile and could easily travel through the forest. With the cover of the forest, Guhan managed to avoid many yuan ku along the way. Those that he could not avoid were killed by a flash of his sword. It was extremely fast. They set off in the morning and arrived at the bank of the Yangtze River in Puku District around 1 in the afternoon. After casually clearing away a few unlucky rat-grade soul devils wandering nearby, Ji Yuhan stepped onto a sand dune by the side of the Yangtze River. Gazing at this great river that had been affectionately called the Mother River by the Chinese before the Great Calamity, he couldn't help but sigh in admiration. It was the first time in Guhan's life that he stood by the Yangtze River. It was the first time he was so close to it. Previously, when he was passing by Yeyang Fortress, he had traveled by the Yangtze River. However, that was on a maglev bus. It was not as clear as standing by the shore. "What are you looking at?" Misaka Mikoto walked up to Guhan in a large down jacket. It was September, the tail end of summer. The weather was still hot and the temperature outside was around 35 degrees Celsius. It was a brave thing for Misaka Mikoto to wear a down jacket under such circumstances. However, it could not be helped. Under the down jacket, Misaka Mikoto was the insulated damp reservoir. If she did not wear a large down jacket to cover up the damp reservoir, she would not even have the courage to go out. Although there was no one else other than Guhan in Nanjing city ruins. "I'm looking at the river." Guhan looked at the surging Yangtze River and sighed. "This is the mother river of our Huaxia people. It is said that our Huaxia people live and reproduce by relying on this river. She is our Huaxia's mother, but most humans don't even have the ability to see their mother with their own eyes. I know, the Yangtze River is also very famous in Japan." Misaka Mikoto heard Guhan's words and her heart was in turmoil. "I'm the same as you. I don't know how long it's been since I've seen Japan's Mount Fuji. That's the father of Japan. Shouldn't your Fusang's father be Shufu?" Ji Yuhan smiled and said, "Shufu said it himself. After he came to Japan, he slaughtered almost all the natives of Japan. After that, the people of Japan are actually the descendants of Shufu's 300 virgin boys and girls and thousands of sailors. Shufu is your real father. You people of Japan are also part of Huaxia. Huaxia is willing to admit that Japan is also part of Huaxia." Misaka Mikoto turned around abruptly and glared at Ji Yuhan. "Have you forgotten the sins that we, the Japanese, have committed? Especially in this place called Nanjing. I still can't believe that our ancestors would do such inhumane things. Huaxia won't forget, but you've also suffered retribution." Ji Yuhan let out a long sigh. "During the Great Calamity, almost all of your Fusang people died at the hands of Yuan Yang. Only a few pitiful orphans managed to assimilate into Yuzhong City and Yangjing City. This can also be considered a kind of retribution. Forget it, let's not talk about this. This isn't my world. The Japan of this world isn't my Japan either. There's no campus city for me here. I'm not even a guest here, I'm just a bandit." Misaka Mikoto's brows were filled with sorrow. Guhan did not expect Misaka Mikoto to see himself and the world in this way. She actually realized that she was a bandit and not the master of this world. There were very few Yuan Ku who could realize this. Guhan could not help but look at Misaka Mikoto in a higher light. Guhan suddenly felt that saving Misaka Mikoto was the right decision. If only Yuan Ku could realize this like Misaka Mikoto. Thinking of this, Guhan could not help but think of Artoria. Did she realize this as well? And that filth, did it really exist in this world? "Ms. Misaka, can I ask you a question?" Guhan suddenly realized that he did not need to guess at all. Misaka Mikoto, who was a free person, was right beside him. She did not seem to be affected by the filth at all. Perhaps he could get the truth about the filth from her. Of course, as long as I know, I can answer you. Misaka Mikoto nodded. She now had a lot of trust in Guhan. As long as Guhan wanted to, he could kill her with a single swing of his sword. However, he was willing to protect her from danger. Misaka Mikoto would remember this kindness in her heart. Ms. Misaka, may I ask if you know about the filth? Guhan asked directly. Filth? Misaka Mikoto was stunned. She did not expect Guhan to ask such a question. How do you know about this name? Are the higher-ups of the human race planning to announce this information to the public? No, it's just a vague and obscure information. I'm not sure what the higher-ups mean. Guhan shook his head. This information was only announced through the dungeon's plot. The higher-ups of the human race had never released any official information about the filth. Most of the players did not pay much attention to the information about the filth. Only a small portion of the players started a private discussion about the filth. If the higher-ups did not want the humans to know about the filth, they should have completely sealed off the King Arthur's betrayal dungeon and banned all private discussions about the filth. If the higher-ups wanted to announce it, all they had to do was to publish a piece of news in the newspaper. However, the higher-ups had chosen the middle method. Even though the discussion about the filth was brewing in the dark, the higher-ups turned a deaf ear to it. It was as if they had never heard about it. Guhan could not help but suspect that there was something shameful going on. I'm sorry, I can't tell you the specifics. That's because the information about the filth was included in the agreement between us and the humans. Only you humans have the right to tell the information about the filth to yourselves. We, the freemen, are not allowed to tell other humans about the secret of the filth. Misaka Mikoto paused for a while. If you're worried about the filth's influence on me, don't worry. We, the freemen, have gotten rid of the filth's influence on us. We're just a bunch of pitiful people who don't care about anything. I understand. Guhan nodded after listening to Misaka Mikoto's words. He did not ask any further questions. Mr. Guhan, we're now at the edge of the Yangtze River. Jianya district is on the other side of the river, and Yuhuatai district is just over 10 kilometers away from us. Shouldn't we cross the river as soon as possible and rush to Yuhuatai district? Misaka Mikoto said anxiously. That's right. Crossing the river is something we have to do. Guhan pointed at the bridge on the right that was hidden in the fog and said, that's the Nanjing Yangtze River's third largest bridge. However, it's already damaged. The bridge deck in the middle is completely broken. Unless we plan to swim halfway, it's impossible for us to cross it. Then, Guhan pointed at another bridge on the other side and said, that's the Nanjing Yangtze River's bridge. It's been around for thousands of years. Although the bridge deck has collapsed in many places, it's not broken. That's the most convenient way to cross the bridge. Then we'll cross the Nanjing Yangtze River's bridge. Misaka Mikoto said anxiously. However, if we cross the river from the Nanjing Yangtze River's bridge, we'll have to pass through Xuanwu District and Qinhuai District to reach Yuhuatai District. These are all areas where the zombies are. If we take this route, I'm afraid we'll have to fight our way through. As he said that, even Guhan's face showed signs of fear. As zombies, the scariest thing about them is their fearless will and their terrifying numbers. I'm just a sword wielder. If we get entangled by the zombies, we'll definitely die. Although Guhan said that they would definitely die, he was just a sword wielder. However, he was actually slightly stronger than a famed sword wielder. Hence, Guhan did not want to reveal his true strength. What's there to be afraid of? We'll just kill our way through. I only need my super electromagnetic gun. Misaka Mikoto wanted to say that her super electromagnetic gun could wipe out all the Yuan Ku in the 3 streets. However, she immediately realized that she was no longer her old self. She was just an unlucky person who needed Guhan's protection. You're right. We can't cross the Nanjing Yangtze River's bridge. Misaka Mikoto shook her head vigorously. She was very distressed. But if we don't cross the bridge, what should we do? Do we have to swim across? I haven't been in the water for hundreds of years. No, it's too dangerous in the water. No one knows if there's any yuan ku in the water. Our sword wielder's combat power will decrease by more than 10 times in the water. As he said that, Guhan felt a headache coming on. It was a well-known fact that sword wielder were not good at fighting in the water. Due to the water resistance and the inability to maintain a stable buoyancy, a blade master would be lucky to be able to unleash 20% of her swordsmanship in the water. One could imagine the outcome of the battle if she encountered a yuan ku in the water. Therefore, the first advice that sword wielder received from their teacher was to never try to fight yuan ku in the water unless your blade master was a water element blade master. If this doesn't work and that doesn't work, how are we going to get across? Misaka Mikoto grumbled. Through here. Guhan stomped on the ground. What do you mean? Through the ground? Misaka Mikoto was stunned. That's right. We're going to go through the ground. Guhan smiled. Chapter 455. The Nanjing Yangtze River Tunnel was located between the Nanjing Yangtze River Bridge and the Nanjing Third Yangtze River Bridge. It was also an important road connecting Jianya District and Puku District. Before the apocalypse, it was once the best tunnel construction in Huaxia. However, after more than 1,000 years, the entrance of the tunnel had been buried by various ruins and was covered by a thick layer of river sand. Even though Guhan and Misaka Mikoto were standing right above the entrance of the tunnel, they could not see any trace of the tunnel at all. It's below here. My sword energy has found a huge space under the soil. In order to find the exact entrance of the tunnel, Guhan shot his sword energy into the ground. Finally, he found a huge space at a certain location. It was probably the entrance of the tunnel. As a result, the precious sword maidens had all turned into hoes and shovels, digging an extremely deep hole in the ground. Looking down from the hole, the inside was dark and empty, and no one knew what was inside the tunnel. Take this with you. Guhan took out 2 small nasal plugs from his dimensional pocket and gave them to Misaka Mikoto. He then stuffed 2 into his nose. What's this? Is there water in it? Misaka Mikoto was stunned when she saw the 2 small nasal plugs. She did not understand why Guhan gave her these things. These aren't waterproof nasal plugs to stuff your nose. They are high-oxygen breathing plugs that allow us to breathe in pure air. Guhan explained, don't be fooled by their small size. Putting them in your nose will not only purify the toxins in the air, but it can also release oxygen. Sword-bearers like us can survive in a toxic or anaerobic environment for a full 24 hours. So that's how it is. I didn't expect human science to have developed to such a level. Unlike us, the Freedom Metropolis, it's been almost 600 years and our technology hasn't improved at all, Misaka Mikoto exclaimed. She then stuffed the nasal plugs into her nose. Both sides of her nostrils were stretched out, making her look like a pig's snout. Get ready, we're going down, Guhan said calmly and was the first to jump into the hole. Misaka Mikoto smiled bitterly, but she followed Guhan and jumped down. President Ju, there's a communication from the headquarters of the 1st Defense Front. Ju Wudao, who was patrolling the guards and evacuation facilities in Yuzhong City, received a report from his secretary. 1st Defense Front Command Center? Why are they looking for me? Could it be that Yuan Ku has begun his attack? An ominous premonition surged in Ju Wudao's heart. He immediately said, bring him in now. Yes. The secretary pressed a button on his personal terminal, and Ju Wudao's personal terminal rang. Ju Wudao immediately picked it up. Hello, I'm the chairman of the Sword Committee, Ju Wudao. Why is the headquarters looking for me? Did Yuan Ku attack? Sir, Yuan Ku hasn't moved. The first defense line is still safe. The person in charge on the other end of the communication hurriedly reported. Then, why are you looking for me? Ju Wudao frowned. What was the commander of the first line of defense doing? Sir, 4 swordsmen who came back from outside the city said they must see you. They also said that they're your disciples and sons. We can't confirm it, so we can only look for you. The person in charge's words were full of doubt. Obviously, he did not believe that the 4 people were Ju Wudao's disciples and sons. However, since the other party was so certain, The person in charge had no choice but to report to Zhu Wudao personally. They came back from outside the city. Could it be that brat, Lu Ren, is back? Zhu Wudao's face lit up when he heard the news. However, he quickly recovered and said sternly, "Ask them to wait for me in the headquarters. I'll go over now." Yes. Oxygen content 5%, chlorine 3%, nitrogen 60%, carbon dioxide 20%, and other harmful gases 10%. The probability of death is high. Don't breathe it directly. This was the answer that the air detector told Guhan. The air in the tunnel that had been sealed for many years was no longer suitable for humans to survive in. If it were not for the high oxygen breathing plug, Guhan would probably be poisoned to death before he could pass through the tunnel. Personal shields had no resistance against toxins. Many swordsmen did not die in the hands of Yuan Ku. Instead, they died of various poisons. Therefore, the high-oxygen breathing plug and various toxin detection equipment became essential items for swordsmen. This was also the reason why Guhan carried these items in his dimensional pocket. How is it? How do you feel? Can you adapt to the environment in the tunnel? Guhan asked Misaka Mikoto, who was next to him. Misaka Mikoto nodded, indicating that she could adapt. Then let's continue to ask for money. Guhan took out his flashlight. The tunnel that had not seen light for hundreds of years was once again illuminated. Unfortunately, the light from the flashlight was too dim. It could only illuminate a small area around Guhan. It was impossible to illuminate the entire tunnel. After hundreds of years, the original surface of the tunnel could no longer be seen clearly. Instead, it was replaced by a layer of floating soil about the thickness of a finger. The floating soil was formed by the accumulation of dust over the past hundreds of years. It looked like thin snow in winter. Looks like this tunnel experienced a calamity during the Great Calamity. After walking for only a few hundred meters, Guhan saw more than 10 abandoned cars on the road. Some of the car doors were still open. It was obvious that the owners had escaped in a hurry and did not even have time to close the car doors. Through the car door, Guhan saw a doll that was mostly covered in dust in the metal frame of the car. It was a cute anthropomorphic sheep doll. Guhan had seen it on the Archaeology Channel before. It was a very famous cartoon from before the apocalypse, Happy Goat and Big Wolf. It was said that people loved this cartoon very much. It was the pride of Hua Xia's cartoon, and it was deeply loved by Bilibili's audience. There was a saying that went, "My childhood was Happy Goat and Big Wolf." That's great. There were other cars that were not as lucky as the owners of this car. They did not open the car doors. The pale bones were sitting in their seats, but the skulls were missing. Guhan took a look. There were 4 sets of bones in the car, and all of them had lost their skulls. Looking at the smooth knife marks on the broken parts, Guhan was sure that their skulls had been cut off by an extremely sharp blade. In other words, they had died in the hands of Yuan Ku. Otherwise, they would have had time to escape from the car. What made Guhan feel the most pity was the small set of bones in the backseat of the car. It looked like she was only a 7 or 8-year-old girl when she was alive. She was wearing a torn floral dress with lace edges. It was obvious that the owner of this set of bones was a little girl who loved to look good. Seeing this, Guhan felt an endless pain in his heart. It was sad and lamentable. If Yuan Ku had not appeared, this child would have grown up, enjoyed a perfect love, had children, and lived a happy life. She would not have used her bones to tell Guhan about her tragic experience 1,000 years later. Should we bury them? Misaka Mikoto and Guhan were both saddened by this tragic scene. This was the difference between free people and Yuan Ku. Free people saw humans as their own kind, but in the eyes of Yuan Ku, humans were completely different, even if Yuan Ku was a human in their original world. Guhan hesitated for a while. It was not that he could not bury them, but there were so many skeletons in the tunnel. If he were to bury all of them, he was afraid that even a few days would not be enough. Therefore, logically speaking, Guhan did not want to do that. However, when he saw the torn white lace dress, Guhan's heart softened. Since he had met her, he should give her the home she deserved. All right, Guhan nodded. But this is the only time. We really don't have time to waste here. I understand. I haven't been this soft-hearted for a long time. Misaka Mikoto nodded. Ever since the apocalypse, she had been through countless hardships and was used to seeing death. She would rarely be soft-hearted by the sight of human bones. This was also because the longsword tunnel in Nanjing was sealed. Neither humans nor Yuan Ku had entered this place. That was why there were so many intact skeletons here. If it were outside, the human bones from the apocalypse would have been blown into gravel by time and wind. They would have become calcium in the soil. Guhan gently pulled on the car door. The originally locked door was easily pulled open. Guhan gently lifted the little girl's skeleton and placed it on a piece of ground that had been cleared at the edge of the tunnel. There was a layer of soil next to her. As long as the soil was covered, the little girl would be able to rest in peace. Wait, this is... When Guhan was moving the bones, he suddenly realized that the skeleton's pelvic cavity was shaped like a funnel. Guhan's face turned pale when he realized that. He hastily filled the cavity with soil and left the place with Misaka Mikoto. What bad luck! How could such a ridiculous thing happen to him when he was being kind? As Guhan and Misaka Mikoto went deeper into the tunnel, there were more cars and skeletons in the tunnel. There were many more people who were in a worse state than the previous family. Misaka Mikoto obediently did not request to bury them. After struggling for about 3 kilometers, they reached the middle of the tunnel. The road ahead was blocked. 2 buses were flipped over on the ground, completely blocking the road that was not wide to begin with. If they wanted to pass through here, they would have to climb over the buses. It was not a difficult task. However, when he saw the bus, Guhan suddenly felt his heart palpitate. It was as if there was something terrifying hidden in the bus. Chapter 456. Master. I'm not here to greet you, Master. Seeing that the door was opened and Ju Wudao walked in, Song Yifei quickly went up and saluted. Ju Wudao was her master, so this was her duty. All right. Ju Wudao nodded. Then, he walked past Song Yifei and walked directly into the room. He saw his son lying on the sofa in a GEU posture. He glanced at Ju Wudao indifferently and then immediately looked in another direction. Seeing his father coming, Ju Elvren did not have any basic reaction at all. He did not even move a bit. This unfilial son. Seeing his son's attitude towards him, Ju Wudao's heart was filled with mixed feelings. He only had one son. He had always wanted to ease the relationship with his son, but no matter what he did, Ju Wudao always treated him like an enemy. This time, when he heard that Ku Rokin had returned, Ju Wudao put down the urgent matters at hand and rushed back immediately. However, when he saw Ku Rokin like this, Ju Wudao felt like a knife was being twisted in his heart. Lu Ren. Thousands of words turned into 2 words. Ju Wudao wanted to ask how his son was, whether he was okay, and whether he was injured. However, he could not say these words of concern. Not only was he a father, but he was also the highest authority in Yuzhang City. His dignity did not allow him to ask these questions. In fact, Ju Wudao was also a teenager, especially in front of his son. Ku Rokin, is this how you treat your father? Although Ju Wudao told himself to be gentle, when he was in front of Ku Rokin, he put on a straight face and said in a stiff and commanding tone, Ku Rokin, I order you to stand up. You are not allowed to lie down like a piece of trash. Ku Rokin still ignored Ju Wudao's request, as if he did not hear what Ju Wudao said. You brat. Ju Wudao was furious. He wanted to teach his impudent son a lesson, but before he could do anything, someone stood in front of him. Sorry, I forgot to remove the seal on him. Liuyan Ling awkwardly walked to Ku Rokin's side and poked him a few times. Ku Rokin, who was lying like a pile of mud, immediately jumped up from the sofa and glared at his father. Then, he kicked the door open and left without looking back. After hearing Ju Wudao confirm that Ku Rokin was his son, the people guarding the door did not dare to stop Ku Rokin. They lowered their heads and let him go. Unfilial son. Unfilial son. Ju Wudao was so angry that he kept shaking. At this time, he was no longer the powerful immortal sword wielder, but a father who could not communicate with his son at all. Grandpa Wudao, Long time no see. Don't be angry with him. Just leave him alone for a while. Liuyan Ling comforted him. Only then did Zhu Wudao focus his attention on Liuyan Ling. Only then did he realize that the descendant of the Liuyan family was also here. Little girl Ling, why are you here? Zhu Wudao was shocked. Didn't you go back to Yangjing City? Grandpa Wudao, you don't know, but Ifei and I became a pair of good sisters in Changyang Mountain. My good sister insisted on coming back to Yuzhong City to live and die together. How could I not help her? Liuyan Ling said with a smile. Nonsense. Nonsense. Zhu Wudao temporarily forgot about Ku Rokin. It's too dangerous here now. You are the direct descendant of the Liuyan family. If anything happens to you, Old Man Muyu will not let me go. You should leave here now and go back to Yangjing City. Zhu Wudao tried to persuade him sincerely. Grandpa Wudao, what kind of person do you think I, Liuyan Ling, am? Since I'm here, I won't leave. Liuyan Ling raised her head proudly. I, Liuyan Ling, am the descendant of the Liuyan family, the bloodline of the Kanzu ancestor. Grandpa Wudao, when have you ever heard of anyone from the Liuyan family retreating in the face of danger? Zhu Wudao didn't say anything. The reason why the Liuyan family could last for 1,000 years as the number one family of the human race was because they were respected by all humans. Of course, part of it was because of their unparalleled combat power, but a large part of it was because of their countless contributions to the human race, as well as the countless battles they fought without retreating. Out of the 29 generations of the Liuyan family, 21 of them died on the battlefield. Every time the Liuyan family participated in a battle, they would charge at the front and fight without retreating, becoming the most hot-blooded flag on the battlefield. Once they encountered them, the Liuyan family would fight to the end. Grandpa, don't try to persuade me. My restful immortal sword and Tianwen sword were found in Yuzhong City's sword pavilion. According to the rules, I'm actually considered a citizen of Yuzhong City. Is it wrong for me to fight for my city? Hearing Liuyan Ling's words, Zhu Wudao didn't know what else to say. Since Liuyan Ling considered herself a citizen of Yuzhong City, how could Zhu Wudao push her away? All right, Ling. Grandpa Wudao owes you this time. Zhu Wudao patted Liuyan Ling's shoulder. The two of them were like real grandpa and granddaughter, full of familial love. Song Ifei watched all this from the side. Although she was still smiling, no one could understand her feelings. She was also Zhu Wudao's disciple, but Zhu Wudao hadn't even looked at her since he came in. Was she still Zhu Wudao's disciple? How sorrowful was that? Disciple, my good disciple is back. Stinky old man, you actually didn't tell me that my precious disciple is back. At this time, the door was forcefully pushed open again, and old man Liu Lei rushed in excitedly. As a result, he circled around the room and did not see the shadow of his precious apprentice. He immediately became anxious and scolded Zhu Wudao, "Smelly old man, where did you take my precious apprentice?" "I didn't see your disciple." Zhu Wudao snorted coldly. "I haven't seen your disciple since I came in. How would I know where he went?" "You haven't seen him?" Liu Lei looked at Zhu Wudao suspiciously, then pushed him away and held Liuyan Ling's hand. "My good Ling, tell Grandpa, where did my precious disciple go?" "Disciple?" Liuyan Ling was stunned. Who was Liu Lei's disciple? She didn't know. "It's Guhan. Pavilion Master is asking us where Guhan went." Song Ifei finally found a chance to interrupt. "Pavilion Master, Guhan originally came back with us, but he encountered an accident on the way, so we came back to inform you first. Guhan has already set off to Nanjing City ruins." "Nanjing City ruins? How did he get there?" Liu Lei was shocked, and put away his mischievous expression. "Where's the arch sword?" Hearing that Guhan had gone to Nanjing City, Zhu Wudao was also a little anxious. However, he wasn't anxious about Guhan's safety, but the arch sword in Guhan's hand. The arch sword naturally went to Nanjing City with Guhan, Song Ifei said softly. "Nonsense, if he were to die there, wouldn't our emperor swords be gone?" Zhu Wudao was furious. That was the arch sword. Even 100 or 1,000 Guhans together couldn't compare to one the arch sword. If he lost his Jiyu Han, Wouldn't it be like a cooked duck flying away just like that? Grandpa Wudao, Guhan must go to Nanjing City. He has to go to save the entire Yuzhang City. Liuyan Ling's expression was very serious. She looked around and said, Grandpa Wudao, Grandpa Liu Lei, the news we're going to tell you is very important. I hope only the two of you can hear it. Very important news. And only the two of them can hear it. Zhu Wudao and Liu Lei looked at each other and nodded. The rest of the sword-bearers in the room retreated like a tide and closed the door. There were no outsiders in the room. Lasling, tell us. What's the matter? Why are you being so cautious? The situation is like this. Liuyan Ling and Song Ifei told Zhu Wudao and Liu Lei everything that happened after they met Misaka Mikoto. When the two sword immortals heard Misaka Mikoto's name, they were shocked. When they heard the name of the creation godhead and Yuan Ku's plan to excavate the Miling mountain range to obtain the Archzergs, they could no longer remain calm. It matched all of them. Zhu Wudao couldn't help but think back to the day when Yu Yang fort had fallen. Updraft had picked up his communicator and told him. Updraft had said that because someone very important to them had been kidnapped by Loki, they had no choice but to help Loki transport Yuan Shen to attack Yu Yang fort. Moreover, Yuan Ku's current actions were exactly as Misaka Mikoto had said. After dispatching his army to occupy the Miling mountain range, he did not do anything else. Instead, he stationed his troops in the Miling mountain range. Initially, Zhu Wudao thought that Yuan Ku wanted to occupy a stronghold and form a pincer attack on Yuzhang City with Yu Yang. Now, he understood that the other party's original goal was the Miling mountain range and the Archzerg in the Miling mountain range. There was no such thing as an idiot leader not believing the main character's words. After hearing the news from Liuyan Ling, Zhu Wudao and Liu Lei were 80% convinced. As for the remaining 20%, they had their own ways to prove it. Ling, thank you for bringing us such important news. If it weren't for you, Yuzhang City would have been destroyed. The inheritance left behind by Emperor Zetian would have been destroyed by our hands. You're Yuzhang City's greatest heroes. Zhu Wudao squeezed Liuyan Ling's hand. Ling, Grandpa Wudao doesn't have time to take care of you now. We have a lot of important things to do. Go outside and look for my secretary. She'll make arrangements for you. Take care of yourself. With that, Zhu Wudao and Liu Lei turned around and left. With such an important piece of news, their entire strategic plan was about to be disrupted. They had to make all sorts of arrangements. Every minute and second of their time was precious, and they could not afford to waste it on fleeting time. Ling Ling, you don't have to find a secretary to make arrangements for you. You can stay at my house tonight. Let's go. Song Ifei and Liuyan Ling were hugging each other. Chapter 457. Looks like we'll have to climb over the wreckage of the bus. Guhan scanned the wreckage with his flashlight. The entire road was blocked by the bus. They would have to climb over it if they wanted to cross it. Be careful, there's a Yuan Ku hiding in the wreckage. Misaka Mikoto placed her hand in front of Guhan. Oh. Guhan nodded. He did not stop and continued to walk forward. You have to believe me. Although I've lost my LV6 ability, my instincts are still at LV6. Yuan Ku is hiding in the bus, waiting for us to walk right into its trap. Misaka Mikoto continued to persuade him. Of course I believe you. Misaka Mikoto could not see Guhan's expression in the dark. I've also sensed it. There's something with bad intentions waiting for us in the bus. However, it's quite troublesome for him to hide in the bus. We have to find a way to chase him out. As soon as Ji Yuhan finished speaking, he walked until he was less than 10 meters away from the bus. Under Misaka Mikoto's curious gaze, Ji Yuhan drew his heaven-reliant sword and unleashed 2 sword auras from Sword of the Abyss. The wreckage of the bus had been in the tunnel for 1,000 years, and the metal on the bus had already become crisp and delicious. Even if an ordinary person were to use force to break the metal on the bus, they would be able to easily break it, not to mention the fact that the cold sword chi had killed it. The 2 sword chis formed a cross in the shape of an X and directly hit the front of the bus. The wreckage of the bus instantly turned into a pile of debris. A piece of debris flew from the front of the bus and fell under Ji Yuhan's feet. This was the bus's route number. Ji Yuhan could vaguely see the number 512 on it. It turned out to be the 512 bus. Seeing this number really made him sigh. The destruction of the wreckage of the bus triggered a huge fog. The thick layer of dust that had accumulated on the ground was instantly blown up by the huge external force, filling the entire space. The flashlight that could illuminate more than 10 meters was instantly reduced to less than a meter of visibility. Oh no, Yuan Ku might hide in the dust and attack us. Misaka Mikoto immediately reminded Guhan when she saw that their line of sight was blocked by the dust. It's not a possibility. He's definitely going to attack us. Guhan's ears were quickly distinguishing the sounds in the tunnel. If Yuan Ku were to attack them, there would definitely be a sound. That was the only way for Guhan to locate Yuan Ku. As expected, Guhan heard the sound of something breaking. The sound came from behind Guhan. Guhan pushed Misaka Mikoto away from him and slashed at a spot covered in dust at lightning speed with the heavenly sword in his hand. Guhan could feel that his blade had hit something. Yuan Ku squeaked like a mouse and retreated into the dust. He had no idea where it was hiding. Guhan took a few steps to the side and returned to Misaka Mikoto's side to protect her. How was it? Did you kill Yuan Ku? Misaka Mikoto asked while panting. No, Yuan Ku's body is very strange. It's like cotton candy. It's too soft. My sword didn't even manage to pierce through its body before it escaped. Guhan answered, however, my attack just now must have injured it. It won't dare to attack us for the time being. The best thing to do is to wait here for it to attack us first. I'll wait for an opportunity to counterattack. I wasn't prepared just now. I just fought as usual. Now that I know its characteristics, Yuan Ku won't be able to escape unscathed the next time. Alright, I understand. Misaka Mikoto nodded. Together with Guhan, she waited for Yuan Ku to attack again. However, after waiting for more than 20 minutes, there was no movement. It was as if Yuan Ku had disappeared. I've underestimated it. I didn't expect it to try and compete with us in terms of patience. Guhan smiled bitterly. Could it be that Yuan Ku has left? Misaka Mikoto guessed. Perhaps it knows that it's no match for you, so it has escaped. No, it hasn't left. It's right next to us. It's hiding somewhere and has its eyes on us. Ji Yuhan stretched out his hand and swiped it across the air, and a small amount of dust appeared in his palm. This dust is the evidence. 20 minutes ago, this dust should have fallen to the ground and returned to its original state. However, it's still causing a commotion right now. Yuan Ku blew the dust into the air. Its purpose is to use the dust to hide its body. It must still be nearby, waiting for an opportunity to attack. I see. I didn't expect a man like you to be so meticulous. If only that idiot was half as smart as you are. Misaka Mikoto thought of a certain person. She had a strange feeling in her heart. She became anxious. Guhan, we can't stay here and play with Yuan Ku any longer. It'll be dark in a few hours. If we don't get to Rainflower Terrace District before dark, our plan will be ruined. I know. However, we don't know what dangers lie ahead. If we don't eliminate Yuan Ku here, we'll face even more cruel dangers later. Guhan said calmly, that's why we have to eliminate Yuan Ku here before we can set off again. But what if he keeps wasting time with us and refuses to come out? Then we'll deal with it as it comes. Since he's using the dust to hide himself, it means that he doesn't have the ability to turn invisible. As long as the dust can't be lifted, he won't be able to hide. Guhan laughed. Make the dust unable to be lifted. What should we do? If I still have my power, I can use electromagnetic energy to create a fan model and use a Category 12 typhoon to blow away all the dust. However, now Misaka Mikoto was a little excited when she talked about her power. However, she quickly realized that she was no longer a level 6 superpower user. She was now just a burden that emitted electricity all over her body. There's no need to go through so much trouble. Ji Yuhan shook his head. I remember when I was still in the first grade of primary school. At that time, what I hated the most was cleaning. Because every time I swept the floor, the dust raised by the broom would get into my eyes, and I was called a crybaby for no reason. Later on, my mom told me that as long as I sprinkle some water on the ground, the dust will stop flying and won't get into my eyes. That's when I realized that the problem that had been bothering me for so long could be solved so easily. All I need to do is sprinkle some water on the ground. Ji Han said it very calmly, but when he recalled these things, Ji Han's heart was extremely depressed and uncomfortable. His eyes even faintly became a little moist. I see. That's right. All I need to do is sprinkle some water. I did the same thing when I was in elementary school 1,000 years ago. However, when I moved to places like Changpantai, I didn't have to do things like cleaning. Misaka Mikoto was also brought into her memories by Guhan's words. It's been 1,000 years and I've completely forgotten about those things. If it weren't for you, I'm afraid I wouldn't have remembered them for the rest of my life. You'll remember them. When you need to remember them, you'll remember them. Guhan clapped his hands. Now, the problem is, where should we get water to cover the entire tunnel? We'll need a lot of water. It's not something that can be solved with a sprinkler. That's easy. Isn't there water above us? Misaka Mikoto sneered. All you need to do is stab it with your sword energy. Do you think the water in the entire Yangtze River won't be enough to fill up this tunnel? That won't work. It's already amazing that this tunnel can last for 1,000 years without being damaged. However, the interior of the tunnel is riddled with scars. Even if I poke a hole the size of a needle, the entire tunnel will be destroyed by the pressure of the water. We'll all drown here. Guhan pouted. Mr. Guhan, what should we do? How do we get enough water to wet the tunnel? Misaka Mikoto's tone sounded like the person who was in charge of supporting the man in a crosstalk. Just watch. Guhan took out a dimensional pocket. Misaka Mikoto noticed that the dimensional pocket was not the simple dimensional pocket that Guhan usually used. Instead, it was a dimensional pocket that was exquisitely made and had embroidery on it. She did not expect that the seemingly poor spirit-level swordsman to have two-dimensional pockets. Ji Han's hand that was holding the dimensional brocade pouch lightly moved downwards, and water actually began to flow out of the dimensional brocade pouch. Although the dimensional brocade pouch was small, the water that flowed out was not small. It was as thick as a soccer ball, and it was estimated that more than a ton of water would flow out of the dimensional brocade pouch in less than a minute. What are you doing? Is this your drinking water? How can you use our drinking water? Isn't this just a drop in the bucket? Misaka Mikoto thought that Ji Han was desperate, so she poured out the water that was meant for drinking. However, even if Guhan poured out all the drinking water, how much would there be? How could it possibly fill up the entire tunnel? We Huaxia have an old saying, be prepared for danger in times of peace. I agree with this saying. That's why I brought enough rice to last me for 10 years and enough drinking water to last me for 50 years. Don't worry, I have enough water. Guhan placed his finger on the flowing water. A few sword auras shot out from Guhan's finger and circled around Guhan's finger. The sword auras were like a large fan. The water that flowed out of the dimensional pocket was stirred by the fan into a large sprinkler. The water continuously flew to various locations in the tunnel. The sprinkler was perfect. The dust that had been drenched by the water could not be blown away no matter how hard it tried. As the dust that filled the air fell, the entire tunnel returned to its original state. This time, the air smelled like dust after a rain. Chapter 458. I didn't expect him to have so much water in his dimensional pocket. The Huaxia people are really smart. Misaka Mikoto did not think too much about it. She thought that Guhan had deliberately brought a lot of water in his dimensional pocket because he was vigilant in times of peace. In reality, Guhan was not so thoughtful as to bring so much water with him. The water was transferred directly from the trial formation in Chongyang Mountain by Guhan. Guhan had set the exit of the transfer at the opening of the dimensional pocket. It looked like water was constantly flowing out from the dimensional pocket, but in reality, the water was transferred directly from the trial formation through the void door. There was an underground river in Changyang Mountain that flowed through the entire trial formation. Naturally, the trial formation would not lack water. Although all the dust had been suppressed and no longer rose, the tunnel was still dark. Although the flashlight could provide a certain amount of illumination, Yuan Yang could still hide in some of the blind spots of the light, making it impossible for the Ji Yuhan to find it. The light from this flashlight is too small. If only I had a bigger flashlight. Misaka Mikoto could not help but sigh when she could not find any trace of Yuan Ku after searching for a few times. A bigger flashlight. Guhan's eyes lit up when he heard that. He smiled and said, "It's not like there's no bigger flashlight. Then why didn't you take it out earlier?" Misaka Mikoto was very unhappy when she heard Guhan's words. If he had a bigger flashlight, why didn't he take it out earlier? Was he afraid that she would steal it? "I don't have the flashlight with me. Where can I get it for you?" Guhan smiled, then turned around and removed the left headlight from a cruise that was scrapped. After more than 1,000 years, the materials used to make the left headlight had decayed. If Guhan used a little more strength, the entire left headlight would be crushed into pieces. Therefore, Guhan was very careful as he removed the left headlight along with the electric wire. "This is the bigger flashlight you were talking about." Misaka Mikoto was stunned when she saw Guhan's action. She then realized that it was indeed a larger flashlight. Although the headlights of a car could not light up the entire tunnel, they were able to light up the area in front of them. "But you've removed the headlight. Where's the electricity coming from?" Misaka Mikoto stopped halfway through her sentence. She had figured out where the electricity was coming from. "Are you planning to use me as the power source for the headlight?" "Not bad. Is there a problem? Or do you think I'm insulting you?" Guhan's words left Misaka Mikoto speechless. That was right. Guhan's plan was simple. He wanted to use Misaka Mikoto's body as a power source. Misaka Mikoto's body was constantly coated with electricity. That was the best battery. "No, it's not like I've never been a power source for others before." Misaka Mikoto seemed to have recalled an interesting memory. However, she quickly broke free from it and continued, "But at that time, I could control the electricity in my body to supply the required voltage for the light bulb. But now, I've lost control of the electricity on my body. It's hundreds or even thousands of volts everywhere. This headlight's operating voltage is 14.7 V. If the electric wire is connected to my body, I'm afraid the light bulb will explode. No, if I didn't return my high school physics to my teacher, the output voltage of a charged object like you is actually dependent on the distance between the positive and negative poles. In other words, it's the traditional upward step voltage." A physics genius had suddenly appeared on Guhan's head. "So, I only need to adjust the linear distance between the two wires and your skin to adjust the voltage. I'm not wrong, am I? P.S. Well, I'm not sure if everyone understands. I don't want to attend physics class. If you don't understand, just skip this part of the explanation. It won't affect the plot anyway. Of course, there's a big bug in this scientific explanation. I welcome all physics geniuses to complain about the author in the book review section. Just don't attack the author personally." As Guhan spoke, he picked up the two wires of the headlight and placed them together on Misaka Mikoto's face. The distance between the two wires was only 2 to 3 millimeters. The reason why he placed it on Misaka Mikoto's face was because the insulated swimsuit she was wearing was designed to completely block the lightning from passing through the raging thunder prison. Even her palms were wrapped in the swimsuit. The swimsuit came with a head cover. When it was used, every part of the user's body would be tightly wrapped without leaving a single gap. However, Misaka Mikoto did not cover her head since she did not have to pass through the raging thunder prison. This meant that Misaka Mikoto's face was the only place where the electricity could be connected to. The moment the two wires came into contact with Misaka Mikoto's skin, something magical happened. The headlight that had been dimmed for 1,000 years lit up again. However, the light was not very bright. It was about the same as a table lamp. "There's not enough voltage." Ji Yuhan immediately reacted. He separated the two wires slightly, and the distance between the contact points continued to lengthen. The headlights of the car actually became brighter and brighter, until they became incomparably dazzling. They were much brighter than normal car headlights. The entire tunnel was illuminated by the headlights. It had not been this bright in the past 1,000 years. There was a sudden commotion in the tunnel. Guhan could hear the sound of something moving. Yuan Ku was frightened by the sudden light and was moving around frantically in an attempt to avoid the blinding light. It was not surprising. Yuan Ku had lived in the dark for decades, centuries, or even thousands of years. His eyes must have adapted to the absolute darkness. He was instinctively afraid of light. His eyes could not withstand such brightness. Chimpih, I found you. You can't escape. Guhan immediately passed the headlight to Misaka Mikoto and said, "Keep the light on me, please." He leaped out and charged into the area where 3 cars were parked in a crisscross pattern. They blocked most of the light. Even with the bright headlight, it was still dark. F***ck. Misaka Mikoto could not say anything. She could only listen to Guhan. She held the headlight in one hand and held the 2 wires to her face with the other. No matter how one looked at it, it was a stupid move. Misaka Mikoto was crying in her heart. This experience would probably be recorded in her dark history for the rest of her life. As Guhan jumped into the darkness, he heard a series of crackling sounds. Then, a white blob escaped from the darkness. Guhan followed closely behind and began to chase after Yuan Ku. Misaka Mikoto immediately used the car's headlights to chase after the Yuan venom. The light from the car seemed to make the white flesh even more agitated. It moved even more crazily. Misaka Mikoto finally saw the Yuan venom's true colors. What kind of Yuan Ku is this? Misaka Mikoto almost threw up her lunch the moment she saw it. Yuan Ku was described as a blob of white meat. In fact, he was a blob of white meat. Or rather, he was made up of many blobs of white meat. If Misaka Mikoto was not mistaken, the blobs of white meat that made up Yuan Ku were made up of human flesh. With just a glance, Misaka Mikoto saw more than 10 navels, more than 10 arms and legs, and more than 10 human heads with different faces. This Yuan Ku had cut up human bodies and then kneaded them together as if they were minced meat to form his own body. He looked like the stitched monster in the Western demonic camp. However, in real life, he was many times more disgusting than the stitched monster. In other words, this Yuan Ku was closer to something like a brother Gui Ni Ma. F***ck me. Misaka Mikoto could not take it anymore. She had lived for 1,000 years but she had never seen such a disgusting monster. Her stomach, which did not have much food to begin with, could not take it anymore. Waves of stomach acid gushed out of her mouth. Light, don't deviate the light. Ms. Misaka, where's your light? Misaka Mikoto vomited and her body swayed. Hence, the light started to waver and no longer shone on the brother Gui Ni Ma. Without the light, the brother Gui Ni Ma started to hide in the darkness. Once it hid in the darkness, Guhan was not confident that he would be able to find it again. Hence, Guhan shouted at Misaka Mikoto to let her light shine where it should. I know. Misaka Mikoto was not a weak lady. Of course, she knew the importance of her light. Hence, after vomiting for the first time, she forcefully suppressed the urge to vomit. She raised the light in her hand again and shone it at Guhan's position. He saw that he had lost his chance to escape because he was hit by the light again. The brother Gui Ni Ma had completely gone mad. He decided to destroy this damned light first. He took a few hits from Guhan's sword and forcefully changed his direction. He then charged at Misaka Mikoto. Get out of the way, get out of the way, Guhan said anxiously. Misaka Mikoto was a freelancer with rich combat experience. When she saw the brother Gui Ni Ma charging at her, she knew that it was going to kill her first. Misaka Mikoto immediately jumped to the side and nimbly dodged Yuan Ku's attack. Misaka Mikoto's combat instincts should not be underestimated. She was a universe-level freelancer, which was equivalent to a sword immortal-level sword wielder. However, there was a problem in the process of dodging. At that time, Misaka Mikoto was holding the light in one hand and pressing the wire on her face with the other. This made it extremely inconvenient for her to fight, and her body was not coordinated at all. Most importantly, she could not hold the light in her hand firmly. If she was not careful, she might drop it. An old light like this would instantly shatter into pieces. After almost dropping the light, Misaka Mikoto did not think too much. She immediately inserted the 2 wires into her nostrils and grabbed the light with both hands. All right, it's safe now. Chapter 459. This Brother Grass Mud Horse, oh, no, to be precise, it should be called Brother Grass Mud Man. It was not a powerful opponent. Its only unique characteristic was that its body was made of various kinds of flesh. Therefore, Guhan's attacks on the surface of its body did not cause too much damage. It was like hitting a tortoise's shell. Therefore, Guhan changed his fighting style. He changed from slashing to slicing. He did not aim to stab deep into its body. All he wanted was to slice off a piece of flesh from its body. Under the guidance of this line of thought, the human bodies that made up this Yuanshan were all chopped down by Ji Yuhan. In the end, what was hidden inside was actually a giant rat about the size of a Chinese countryside dog. It was this rat that had gathered all these human bodies together and controlled them to fight. To put it more vividly, the body formed by these human bodies was like a mech, and this rat was the pilot of this mech. Once the pilot left his mecha, he would be a rat that could be killed with a single stomp. Moreover, the pilot was a rat to begin with. After its mecha was completely destroyed, the rat's first instinct was to crawl into the various wreckage and ruins to escape. However, it was sliced in half by the heavenly sword. A dimensional vortex appeared and sucked the rat into it. What kind of Yuan coup is this? I've never seen such a disgusting Yuan coup in my life. Misaka Mikoto walked over with a lamp in her hand. This Brother Grass Mud Man had really disgusted Misaka Mikoto. I don't know. We humans don't have any information on this Yuan coup. Guhan shook his head. He had used his personal terminal to scan this Yuan coup when he was fighting just now. He did not find any information on him. This meant that this was a brand new Yuan coup that humans had never seen before. Guhan looked around the battlefield and noticed that the limbs that he had chopped off were still on the ground. Moreover, they were rotting at a speed that was visible to the naked eye. Those that had bones were rotting until only bones were left, and those that did not had turned into a puddle of corpse water. This should be one of the members of the Yuan coup that occupied half of Nanjing. It should be a zombie rat that gained the ability to control corpses after being infected. Therefore, these corpses were not brought over from another world, but the corpses of those who died in our world. Perhaps they were the victims of the Great Apocalypse from 1,000 years ago. After breaking free of Yuan Ku's control, they rapidly rotted away, Guhan guessed. No, you said that this group of zombies suddenly appeared in Nanjing a few hundred years ago. If that mouse is really a member of the zombies, how could it have the ability to get the corpses of the dead from 1,000 years ago? These corpses should be from the past few hundred years. Misaka Mikoto noticed the loophole in Guhan's words. Forget it, this has nothing to do with us. We should leave this tunnel as soon as possible. Guhan shook his head and looked at Misaka Mikoto's face. Then, he saw the 2 wires that extended from the back of the headlamp connected to Misaka Mikoto's nostrils. It felt like Misaka Mikoto's nostrils were large and loose socket. Guhan's face twitched. He forcefully held back his laughter and walked forward without looking back. He did not dare to look at Misaka Mikoto for too long. Otherwise, he would really laugh out loud. What's wrong? Is there something strange on my face? Misaka Mikoto touched her face and touched the 2 wires that were inserted into her nostrils. Instantly, her face turned red from her nostrils to her ears. She hurriedly pulled the 2 wires out of her nostrils. She was so angry that she wanted to throw the headlamp that had embarrassed her out of her face. However, just as she was about to throw it out, Misaka Mikoto stopped herself from doing so. She smiled bitterly and put the wires on her face. The headlamp was very useful in the tunnel. At the very least, she would not have to endure the unlucky darkness. She could not help Guhan much. If she could not even use the headlamp, she really did not know what use she would have. Perhaps it was due to the overturned bus blocking the road, The two sides of the tunnel were in two completely different states with the bus as the dividing line. At the end of Ji Yuhan's entrance, the cars were relatively sparse and not crowded. However, at the other end, the tunnel that was originally 6 lanes had been forcibly turned into 10 lanes. The traffic was densely packed. For the specific situation, one could refer to the large-scale traffic jams on the internet. Perhaps due to the apocalypse, everyone wanted to escape the city through the tunnel. As a result, the overturned bus caused the entire tunnel to be blocked. This blockage lasted for 1,000 years. The vehicles were very densely packed. It was very difficult for a person to pass between two vehicles. Guhan thought for a while and decided to walk over the top of the vehicles. This way, he would be able to pass through the tunnel much faster. However, the vehicles had long decayed. If someone were to walk over the top of the vehicles, it was very likely that they would break the roof of the vehicles. That was why Ji Yuhan reminded Misaka Mikoto to be gentle and quick with her movements. Unfortunately, Guhan had overestimated Misaka Mikoto. She had used up a lot of energy when she was evading Yuan-ku. Therefore, when she stepped on the roof of a BYD Tang, her body that had been deliberately lifting up sank. A hole instantly appeared on the roof of the BYD Tang, and Misaka Mikoto fell into the car. When Guhan noticed that the lights behind him had dimmed, he knew that something had happened to Misaka Mikoto. He jumped back onto the roof of the BYD Tang and got into the car. "Ms. Misaka, are you all right?" Guhan turned on the flashlight and saw that Misaka Mikoto had fallen between the front and back seats. Her face had landed on a pair of high heels. After 1,000 years, the soles of the high heels were not as glamorous as they used to be. They successfully left a long gash on Misaka Mikoto's face. Misaka Mikoto was disfigured this time. "My face." Misaka Mikoto got up and wiped her face. She realized that there was a gash on her face and her hands were covered in blood. "It's been more than 500 years. My face is disfigured again." Although her face was injured, which was very important to a woman, Misaka Mikoto was still quite calm. She even laughed at herself. Guhan could not help but give Misaka Mikoto a thumbs up for her attitude. Well, the reason why Misaka Mikoto was in such a good mood was that she was a universe-level freelancer. As long as she regained her strength, the wound would heal in a matter of seconds. There was no need to worry about scabs forming. It was not a big deal. All she needed to do was to clean it up a little. However, when she got up, Misaka Mikoto suddenly let out a humph shyly. Guhan was stunned. He looked to the side and realized that there was an even more interesting scene in the backseat. There was a pair of very unique skeletons in the backseat. One of the skeletons was lying on half of the sofa. The skull was leaning against the car door and the leg bones were clearly divided into the shape of an M. One of her feet was leaning against the seat with a high heel hanging from it. It seemed to be the sister of the high heel that stabbed Misaka Mikoto. The other foot was outside the seat. Since the sole of the foot was not supported, the seat had fallen off. Hence, the other high heel had fallen to the ground. On this skeleton's pelvis, there was another skeleton's skull stuck to it. This skeleton was half kneeling on the ground, its two hands grabbing onto the leg bones of the other skeleton, like a diligent gardener. Looking at this scene, Guhan's mind instantly imagined a couple having sex in the backseat of the car. It was rare for the couple to grab onto the woman's legs and spread them apart. Then, they would bury their head between them and lick each other. No wonder Misaka Mikoto would let out a humph shyly when she saw this. However, Misaka Mikoto's imagination was a little too good. She could even imagine a skeleton to the extent of blushing. By the way, it was worth mentioning that there was a small part of the woman's leg bones that was left with black stockings. It could be considered the temptation of the black stockings of death. However, it seemed that the couple had done this in the backseat after they were stuck in a traffic jam. Under normal circumstances, no one would be interested in doing something like this when they were on the run. He probably realized that he had no hope of surviving, so he wanted to have a good time before he died. Moreover, they suddenly died in the middle of a fierce battle. Looking at the large number of cars around them, other than the overturned bus, almost all the cars were intact. In other words, the cars were not damaged at all. These humans must have died silently. What kind of person was Yuan Ku? What kind of attack could kill so many humans without damaging the cars? Would Yuan Ku still be in Yangjing City? These were all questions that Guhan needed to think about. Let's go. Guhan, who had a bad feeling about this, knew that Misaka Mikoto was feeling awkward. He took the initiative to kick the door open and was the first to leave the car. Misaka Mikoto followed closely behind him. The road ahead was still blocked by the densely packed cars. It was too slow to pass through the gaps between the cars. Guhan did not want to use his sword energy to destroy the cars and disturb the victims who were sleeping in the cars. Therefore, Guhan had no choice but to walk on top of the car. However, looking at Misaka Mikoto, she could no longer control her own weight. Ms. Misaka, I'm sorry. Guhan suddenly said to Misaka Mikoto. Before Misaka Mikoto could react, Guhan had already carried her in a princess carry. She did not even have the chance to protest as Guhan jumped onto the roof of another car. Like a frog, he jumped from car to car and moved quickly in the tunnel. Although he was carrying Misaka Mikoto, Guhan was still able to jump over the car like a feather. His speed was much faster than carrying Misaka Mikoto. In less than 10 minutes, Guhan saw a silver ray of light shining down from above. Guhan knew that he had finally reached the end of the tunnel. He had crossed the Yangtze River. Chapter 460. Come in, this is my home. I haven't cleaned it for more than 20 days, it's a little messy. Song Yifei stuck out his tongue and opened the door that he had not opened for more than 20 days. Liuyan Ling, who was standing at the door, was a little hesitant. This was the first time that she had entered another ordinary girl's home, the home of a girl that she got along with as a friend and best friend. This gave Liuyan Ling a feeling that she had never felt before. Then I won't stand on ceremony. Liuyan Ling laughed heartily and walked into Song Yifei's room. Song Yifei's room was a typical girl's room. The whole space was painted and decorated with pink as the main color. There were all kinds of cute decorations everywhere, giving people a kawaii feeling as soon as they entered. Yifei, your house doesn't look like it hasn't been cleaned for 20 days. Liuyan Ling touched the table and found that it was spotless. This was definitely not the appearance of a room that had been left uncleaned for 20 days. Then my mother has been here. Song Yifei also found that his house was very clean. After thinking for a moment, a sweet smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. It should be my mother. I've told her not to clean it. I'll clean it myself when I come back, but she just won't listen. If I knew this earlier, I wouldn't have given her the door key. Yifei, your mother is so nice. Fleeting Time's thoughts were clearly touched by Song Yifei's words, and he muttered to himself in a voice that only he could hear clearly, Song Yifei, you're right. What did you say, Ling? I can't hear you clearly. Song Yifei turned his head and looked at Liuyan Ling confusedly. Liuyan Ling smiled. Nothing, I'm just curious why your mother doesn't live with you. I heard that after ordinary people become sword-bearers, they will move their family to the house in the core area to live. Why doesn't your mother live in your new home? TSK, she's stubborn. No matter how I persuade her, she won't move in. What can I do? Speaking of this topic, Song Yifei couldn't help complaining, she just can't let go of the small hospital she works in. She said that it takes an hour to go to work from the core area to the hospital. Why does she want to waste an hour on the way to work? I've already told her that I have a friend at the core area's medical service center. The director is also my teacher. My mother can come to the medical service center here anytime she wants. It's just a short distance away, but she refused to come. Why? Don't tell me the working conditions in the medical service center of the core region aren't good. Are you too busy with work? Liuyan Ling asked curiously. How could it be bad? How could it be busy? Song Yifei stuck out his tongue. When I worked at the medical service center, I spent 2/3 of my time sleeping. The only time I went to work was when I met Jiyu Han, the unlucky guy. No wonder the conditions there were not good. Then why? Liuyan Ling was even more confused. There's no reason. It's just that it's too good and too free. Song Yifei sighed. My mother said that there are too few hospitals in the common area and too few doctors. Every day, there are many patients who can't get treatment in time, and many die because of it. If she goes to the core area, there will be even fewer doctors, because more patients will die if she leaves. She thinks that if she leaves the hospital in the common area, all the patients who die will be her fault, so she will never leave the common area. She's really a great mother and a great doctor. Ife, I admire your mother very much. She's also a hero. Liuyan Ling couldn't help but respect Song Ife after hearing his words. Whatever. Anyway, heroes in this world never have good endings. Song Ife shook his head. Forget it. Let's not think about it anymore. Ling, let me show you your room. Every room of mine is decorated according to the world's cutest standards. You'll definitely like it. The door of Song Ife's room was opened again. Song Ife walked out of the room with a few bags of garbage. Although her mother took away a lot of garbage when she helped her to clean up, she was a girl and could always clean up a lot of garbage if she wanted to. Fortunately, throwing garbage was not a laborious thing. As long as she threw it into the garbage pipe at the door, the garbage would be automatically transported to the garbage disposal station for treatment. Song Ife didn't have to worry about it at all. Song Ife threw the garbage into the pipe and was about to go home, but he heard a surprised voice behind him. Master Ife, you're back. Song Ife's body trembled, then he closed the door that was originally open. Turning around, he saw Wen Maiyun with a surprised face. She was carrying big and small bags of things, and it seemed that she had just bought some toys. You're the maid of Guhan's family. Song Ife said hesitantly. Yes, Master Ife. I'm the exclusive maid of Master Guhan. I wish Master Ife good health. When Maiyun first bowed, then her whole body quivered, and she was so excited that she was about to open the door of her room. Look at me, since Master Ife is back, then Master must be back too. The house is still a mess, I have to hurry and clean it up. Don't be so excited, Guhan hasn't come back yet. Song Ife hesitated for a moment, but still took the initiative to say. Did Master go to the Swordbearer's service center? That's good, I still have time to clean up the house. When Maiyun breathed a sigh of relief. It would be best if Guhan came back later. She had to clean up the house beautifully, so that she could be worthy of her master's care. No, he's not at the Swordbearer's service center. Song Ife patted Wen Maiyun's back. Guhan hasn't returned to Yuzhong City yet, you don't have to be so anxious. Didn't Master set off for the mission with you? Shouldn't he be coming back with you? When Maiyun shuddered, her whole body instantly filled with fear. Could it be that Master, for the exclusive maids of the Swordbearers, every time the Swordbearers left the city on a mission, it was a torment, because their master might never return. As exclusive maids, countless maids happily waited for their master to return every day, but all they got was a piece of grievous news. Regardless of whether the maids and the Swordbearers had feelings for each other, the death of their master was an extremely tragic thing for the maids. If the maids had the master's flesh and blood, it was still all right, and the Swordbearers would receive a monthly maintenance fee for the maids to raise the master's bloodline. However, if there was no bloodline, the maids would become useless. They would either be chased out of the core area and return to a normal life, or they would be sent back to the maid service center. If they were young, they could still find another master, but if they were old and no one wanted them anymore, they could only wait for death in the maid service center, living the life of a walking corpse. Therefore, when Maiyun heard from Song Ife that Guhan hadn't returned to Yuzhong City, her first reaction was that Guhan had met with danger during the mission and had unfortunately passed away. Guhan had gone on a mission with Song Ife, but Song Ife had returned, but Guhan hadn't. Didn't that mean that he was dead? When Maiyun was already old. Although she was still attractive, it was almost impossible for her to meet a man as considerate as Guhan in this lifetime. There was also her Xiao Ya. Without her status as the exclusive maid of the Swordbearers, she didn't even have the spare energy to take care of Xiao Ya. Therefore, when Maiyun was in a state of extreme fear, she was afraid to hear the news that Guhan had died in battle. Don't think too much. Guhan is fine now. At least when we were separated, he was absolutely safe and alive. Song Ife held Wen Maiyun's hand. I can't tell you too much. All you need to know is that Guhan had something to do and left us. Once he's done, he'll return to Yuzhong City. Guhan is very capable, he'll be fine. I see. I got it. Thank you, Master Ifei. When Meiyun's racing heart finally calmed down temporarily. It was good that Guhan was fine. It was good that he was fine. Go back and take good care of Guhan's house. Wait for him to come back. Song Ifei thought for a moment and added, Yuzhong City may be under attack soon. You have to be prepared. Once you hear the alarm, go to the underground shelter immediately. The deeper the shelter, the better. Do you understand? Is the great invasion really coming? When Meiyun's hand trembled again. Didn't the TV say that the attack has been stopped and that it won't reach Yuzhong City? You only need to believe 5 out of 10 words in the news. Anything more is just bullsh*t. Song Ifei spoke the truth. But it's good that you know this. Don't tell anyone else. Buy enough food and stay at home. Be ready to take shelter at any time. This is the best way. Okay, I'm going back. Take care of yourself. Goodbye. After that, Song Ifei waved his hand and opened the door to go back. When Meiyun shivered and immediately opened the door to go back. The entire corridor fell into silence again. You can't go this time. Yuzhong City needs your overall management. If you go, the whole city will be in chaos. Let me go this time, Liu Lei said firmly to Zhu Wudao in the meeting room of the Sword Committee. After a thorough discussion, Zhu Wudao finally decided to send the most elite investigation team to infiltrate the Miling mountain range to investigate whether things were really like what Liuonian Ling had brought back. Yuan Ku was trying to mine the Emperor Seed dimensional crystals in the Miling mountain range and activate the creation divinity to destroy the whole of Yuzhong City. This was a very dangerous mission. In a place where Yuan Ku had gathered in large numbers, sending ordinary swordbearers to investigate would be suicidal. Therefore, Zhu Wudao decided to send an immortal sword-bearer to personally lead the team. This was the only way to bring back the news. There were only 2 immortal sword-bearers in Yuzhong City. The immortal sword-bearers who would lead the team could only be Zhu Wudao and Liu Lei. After the decision was made, Liu Lei's first request was for him to lead the team. However, Zhu Wudao rejected him. This time, Zhu Wudao had to do it himself. Because you are the Sword Pavilion Master, Zhu Wudao snorted. Have you forgotten the rules of the previous Sword Pavilion Masters? You are not allowed to leave the city for more than an hour, and you are not allowed to leave the Sword Pavilion for more than 5 hours. Your task is to protect the Sword Pavilion of Yuzhong City. Apart from that, you don't have to do anything else. Don't try to use the rules of the Sword Pavilion to pressure me, Liu Lei said agitatedly. My ranking on the Immortal Sword leaderboard is higher than yours, and I am stronger than you. I, the Cloudy Sword Immortal, should lead the team. Why don't you let me go? Old man, don't forget that you are holding the lifeblood of the whole of Yuzhong City in your hand. Zhu Wudao yelled at Liu Lei. Everyone in Yuzhong City, including me, will die. It doesn't matter. As long as the Sword Pavilion is here, Yuzhong City can be rebuilt. But if the Sword Pavilion is finished, even if everyone in Yuzhong City survives, Yuzhong City will still be completely destroyed. As the Sword Pavilion Master, you know the pros and cons of this better than I do. Think about it yourself. Zhu Wudao kicked the table and disappeared from the conference room, leaving a speechless Liu Lei sighing at the empty sky. Chapter 461. Jianye district of Nanjing City was the central urban area of ancient Nanjing City. It could be seen from the many tall high-rise buildings that this area was a prosperous place in the past. Unfortunately, after 1,000 years, this area had become a city mixed with forests and reinforced concrete. Most of the roads had disappeared and were replaced by patches of soil. Tenacious trees rose from the soil and shrouded the entire city under the shade of the trees. Guhan looked up at the internet and could even see the wreckage of many cars fused with the trunks of the trees. Parts of these cars were like dumplings that grew with the tree trunks. It was as if the cars were part of the trees. In order to survive and grow, These plants are willing to work so hard. They're willing to fuse their bodies with steel to grow stronger. This is the spirit. It's really touching. Aren't we humans the same as these trees? Guhan could not help but lament when he saw the scene. P.S. This description isn't an exaggeration. If an iron fellow leans against the tree trunk for a long time without moving, it will be absorbed into its body by the ever-thickening tree. There's a story in real life. During World War II, the owner of a bicycle locked his bicycle beside a tree and went to war. He never returned. More than 60 years later, people accidentally found the bicycle and found that it had become one with the trunk of the tree. You can go to Baidu for this news. There are pictures and everything. It's the real deal. Mr. Guhan, if you have the time to feed yourself chicken soup, why don't you take a look at the front? I think we're surrounded. Misaka Mikoto patted Guhan's shoulder. Guhan looked up and saw a group of people walking toward him in a trance not far away. There seemed to be a lot of them, at least 100 of them. Of course, Guhan did not think that these people were humans. There were no living human survivors in the ruins of Nanjing City. There was only one possibility for these people, and that was Yuan Ku, who ruled the entire old Nanjing City, zombies. As expected, when these figures gradually approached, Guhan could clearly see their appearances. They were wearing all kinds of torn clothes, and the surface of their bodies was completely rotten. Stinking black liquid kept flowing out of their bodies. Some parts of their bodies were missing, revealing the white bones inside. However, the loss of flesh and skin did not seem to affect their movements. They still walked firmly towards Guhan's position. Yuan Ku name, normal zombie. Level, mouse, 2-dimensional world, movie world HP, 2 stars attack, 1 star agility, half a star magic, none. Ability, it doesn't have any special abilities. If it weren't for the fact that it doesn't feel pain, it would be able to attack its enemies even if it only had a head left. However, its combat power is even lower than that of an ordinary person. His main method of attack was to use his fingernails and the teeth in his mouth to attack his enemies. It was worth noting that their teeth carried a deadly virus. Ultimate skill, Nor. Introduction, a type of Yuan Ku from the movie world. It is commonly believed to have originated from movies such as Resident Evil, The Walking Dead, and Zombies World War. It has no intelligence and is the lowest level of Yuan Ku. Any sword mistress can take on 10 opponents at once. As long as you don't get bitten, you don't have to worry about anything. Battle record, it has appeared many times in the real world. The specific battle record cannot be calculated, but it is estimated that it has fought more than 100,000 battles in 1,000 years. Battle result, the number of sword bearers who died at the hands of normal zombies was extremely low. 1 year ago, there were less than 500 of them. Most of them were young ancient sword bearers. Among these 500 people, most of them did not fight against a single normal zombie, Yuan Ku. Instead, they died under the combined attacks of normal zombies and other high-level zombies. Battle suggestion, for novice ancient sword bearers, if there are less than 10 normal zombies, please leave them to your sword mistress. If there are more than 10 normal zombies without teammates, consider escaping. Please judge according to your own information. This really isn't a dangerous Yuan Ku. If you can't beat it, you can run. This was the advice Guhan received from his personal terminal after scanning. Guhan had already memorized this information. He only scanned it to make sure he didn't miss anything. However, there was one thing that the information didn't mention. The danger that normal zombies posed to sword bearers was not as simple as the information made it out to be. If one was really bitten, it would be very troublesome. The teeth of these zombies contained a fatal virus that humans had yet to find an effective antidote for. Within 1 to 72 hours of being poisoned, a normal person would turn into a new zombie. However, this was only the effect of a normal person's bite. If it was a sword bearer, the effect would be greatly reduced. Most ancient sword bearers could survive for 10 days to half a month without being infected. As long as they took some time to drink a normal antidote, they would be able to survive for another month. After a month, the sword bearer's immune system would be able to completely eliminate the virus. Therefore, The sword committee didn't pay much attention to this poison. They didn't even bother to write about it in the information. In fact, Guhan didn't care about the poison. He pulled out Qingpin's sword and released it. Then he patted Qingpin's head and said, "Come, I'll leave these yuan ku to you, Qingpin. You're ordering Qingpin around like a coolie again, you stinky Guhan," Qingpin muttered. Then he looked at his opponent. "Wow, Guhan, they're so disgusting." The poor were immediately disgusted by the appearance of these yuan yu. This was very normal. Any young lady who saw such a yuan yu would feel disgusted from the bottom of her heart. "You call this disgusting? If I let you see that brother Tuan Yuan Zhan who is as expensive as a grass mudhorse, won't you be scared to death?" Misaka Mikoto pouted. She couldn't help but blush when she thought about how she looked when she saw the noble yuan ku. It was too embarrassing. It was too embarrassing. That was not how a free universe level should behave. On the other hand, under Guhan's strict orders, Qingpin reluctantly picked up her small sword and started to kill the group of hundreds of normal yuan ku. If it was Qingpin who had just finished synchronizing, she wouldn't be able to fight 2 or 3 normal zombies, let alone 100 normal zombies. Qingpin would have a hard time fighting them. It wasn't that Qingpin didn't have enough strength. It was purely because her swordsmanship was a mess at that time. She would be lucky if she didn't injure herself during the sword dance. She couldn't expect her to use any effective swordsmanship. However, after going through the tempering of the Great Trial Array, this penniless swordsman's swordsmanship had already reached a certain level. Oh, a certain level was an understatement. This penniless swordsman's swordsmanship had already surpassed the boundary of a certain level. In the ancient world of wuxia, this penniless swordsman could be considered a famous swordsman. Moreover, Qingpin had reached the first level. His physical fitness had increased by 2.5 times. In reality, his physical fitness was about the same as a sword maiden's. Killing the lowest level of yuan ku was as easy as chopping melons and vegetables for him. On the surface, the 1.2-meter-tall Qingpin running into the horde of strange uncles and bad zombies was like sending a sheep into a tiger's mouth. He would definitely be eaten on the spot. However, in reality, it was as if a heavy truck had charged in. Wherever Qingpin went, the zombies' heads would fly. Qingpin didn't waste a single slash. Every slash was aimed at the zombies' necks. Moreover, every slash was clean and efficient, and the zombie's head was chopped off. There was never a need for a second slash. In game terms, Qingpin's attack power had exceeded the zombies' health points. One slash was all it took to kill the zombies. In just a short while, the zombies were reduced by half. Soon, they would all die under Qingpin's sword. "Guhan, what level is this sword maiden? What's her name?" Misaka Mikoto asked Guhan after watching Qingpin's performance. "She's Qingpin. She's my sword maiden, an ancient sword maiden." Guhan smiled when he said Qingpin's name. He then grabbed Misaka Mikoto's arm and pulled her to his side. Misaka Mikoto unsheathed her heavenly sword. All she saw was a flash of silver light from the sword. Then, she heard the sound of watermelons falling to the ground beside her. "So, you've noticed." Misaka Mikoto turned around and saw a few more zombie corpses beside her. Their heads had been chopped off by Jiyu Han's heavenly sword that was dripping with blood. Misaka Mikoto had noticed that some of the yuan ku were trying to ambush her and Guhan from behind. However, Misaka Mikoto did not tell Guhan about it. She wanted to see how miserable Guhan would look when he was ambushed by the yuan ku. She was not worried that Guhan would be injured by the yuan ku. Guhan had a shield around him. The yuan ku would not be able to break through his shield unless they surrounded him and attacked him for a few hours. As for Misaka Mikoto herself, although Misaka Mikoto had lost the ability to attack others, it was an entirely different matter if someone attacked her first. The electric current coursing through Misaka Mikoto's body would let the genin who tried to ambush her understand the principle of being a genin. "I'm the sword master. If I can't even notice these ambushes, how can I be the sword master?" Guhan took out a handkerchief from his dimensional pocket. He wiped the blood off the heavenly sword and put it back into his scabbard. Misaka Mikoto stared at the heavenly sword for a while. I have a question. I'm not sure if I should ask it. Misaka Mikoto hesitated for a while. Ask away. What do you want to ask? Guhan looked at Misaka Mikoto curiously. You're a famed sword-tier sword wielder. Why did you lie to your friend and say that you're a treasure sword-tier sword wielder? Misaka Mikoto asked the question in her mind. Chapter 462. I'm a saber-level sword wielder. I'm not a famed sword wielder. Guhan had a strange expression on his face when he heard Misaka Mikoto's words. Misaka Mikoto was even more certain of her speculation when she saw Guhan's expression. Although I don't have much contact with sword wielder, I've been friends with Yi Qing. Just like you and I, we've fought side by side before. Misaka Mikoto's gaze landed on the heavenly sword in Guhan's hand. I've seen Lady Heavenly before, whether it's her real body or her real body. You can't lie to me. The sword in your hand isn't a Duyu sword. It's the heavenly sword wielder. Your real saber-level sword wielder is Lady Heavenly, am I right? Guhan could only smile bitterly when he heard Misaka Mikoto's words. Since you've recognized me, what else can I do? That's right, I'm indeed a famed sword wielder. Heavenly is my saber-level sword wielder. Jiyu Yun is my famed sword wielder, Duyu sword. Why? Why did you hide it from me? To hide the fact that you're a famed sword wielder? Misaka Mikoto pondered for a while before a sudden realization dawned on her. No, I don't think you're hiding it from me. You're hiding it from Liuonian Ling and your friends. You gave your famed sword-rank sword mistress a name with the same surname as yourself and even lied about her being your sister. You want to hide the fact that you are a famed sword-rank sword wielder from your friends. That must be it. Misaka Mikoto's mind instantly came up with a shocking truth. Hehe, Ms. Misaka, I've really underestimated you. I didn't expect you to be able to guess everything. Guhan let out a long sigh and bowed deeply to Misaka Mikoto. He begged sincerely, Ms. Misaka, I hope that you can help me hide the fact that I'm a famed sword-level sword wielder. Please, I'm begging you. I came all the way to Nanjing City to save you. I need an explanation. Misaka Mikoto stared into Guhan's eyes. Although this is an internal matter between you humans and I have no right to interfere, I don't want to fight with a liar. Please give me an explanation. All right, I'll tell you. Guhan raised his head and looked at the sky. You're right. In fact, I've been a famed swordsman for a long time. The Duyu sword is my famed sword mistress. They've always thought that I'm just a sword wielder of the sword grade, and that Jiyu Yun is my biological sister. You're saying that Duyu is your sister? Why? Why did you hide it from them? Can't you just tell them? Won't they be happy that you're a famed sword-level sword wielder? Misaka Mikoto asked. I'm not trying to hide my identity as a famed sword-level sword wielder, and I'm not trying to make her my sister's identity either. It's because the Duyu sword's identity is too special. Guhan took out the Duyu sword again and released her into Jiyu Yun's body. Brother, I'm sorry. Little Yun has caused you trouble. Brother, you've worked too hard to hide little Yun's identity. Jiyu Yun threw herself into Guhan's arms as soon as she was released. She sobbed silently. Guhan had to give Jiyu Yun 100 marks for her eyes. Ms. Misaka, you know a lot about sword mistresses. Look at little Yun. Do you think she's a natural sword mistress or a man-made one? Guhan suddenly asked. Is it that hard to answer? Anyone can see that Duyu is a natural sword mistress with her own soul. She's not like the machine-like sword mistress that you guys created, Misaka Mikoto answered casually. Misaka Mikoto replied casually. However, she soon realized something and her jaw dropped. Are you trying to tell me that she's actually a man-made blade master in Duyu? That's right. Jiyu Yun, or Duyu, is a man-made sword mistress. Guhan said helplessly. If word gets out that Jiyu Yun is a man-made sword mistress, we humans will definitely capture her and lock her up in a laboratory. We'll figure out how Jiyu Yun has her own soul even though she's a man-made sword mistress. If all man-made sword mistresses have their own souls, the strength of humans will increase tremendously. As the leader of humans, It's an irresistible temptation. However, Ji Yu-yoon will be treated inhumanely as a test subject. She might even become their toy. They will dismantle her, assemble her, or even disassemble her. However, I don't think Ms. Misaka can understand the pain she's going through, Gu-han said in a sorrowful tone. At the same time, Ji Yu-yoon began to cry as well. Gu-han did not know that what he said was like a knife stabbing deep into Misaka Mikoto's heart. Who says I don't know the pain that Ji Yu-yoon has to go through? How do you know that it hasn't happened to me before? Misaka Mikoto cried out of the blue. Then, she and Ji Yu-han fell into a state of grief. Ms. Misaka, have you gone through the same thing as Ji Yu-yoon? Are there people who dare to take your family, friends, or even your sister for research and disassembly? Gu-han asked. Let's not talk about the past. Misaka Mikoto shook her head and nodded. She looked at Gu-han as if they were in the same boat. I know your pain. Don't worry, I'll keep this a secret for you. I won't tell anyone that Ji Yu-yoon is a sword mistress in front of any human, Yuan Ku, or any freelancer. Ji Yu-yoon is just your sister, that's all. Thank you. Ms. Misaka. Gu-han held Misaka Mikoto's hand tightly and sighed in his heart. Finally, this matter is over. According to Gu-han's original plan, Ji Yu-yoon would follow Liuyan Ling and Song Yifei back to Yuzhong City as his sister. Then, there would be no doubt about it. Unfortunately, Gu-han could not do that because the sword mistress must be a certain distance away from the wielder. Otherwise, the wielder would be forced to return to the sword. That was the rule for all sword mistresses. Therefore, Ji Yu-yoon could not follow Liuyan Ling and the rest back. However, it did not make sense for Gu-han to bring Ji Yu-yoon to Nanjing City. No wielder would put their loved ones in danger. Therefore, Gu-han asked Ji Yu-yoon to leave a note for Liuyan Ling. Ji Yu-yoon said that she did not want to be separated from her brother and wanted to be with him. She then hid in the Qingpin's scabbard and followed Gu-han. After all, Liuyan Ling and Song Yifei were the ones who saw Ji Yu-yoon escape from the Qingpin's scabbard. Therefore, it was easy to fool Liuyan Ling. However, it was not so easy to fool Misaka Mikoto. It would be troublesome if Ji Yu-yoon pretended to be his sister during the battle. Not only would he not be able to use the power of the Duyu, he would also have to make Ji Yu-yoon pretend to be a weak child and waste a lot of energy to protect Ji Yu-yoon. In Nanjing City, which was filled with zombies, it was no different from asking for trouble. He had forced himself to wear the halo of being wiped out. Gu-han would never do such a stupid thing. Therefore, after Gu-han brought Ji Yu-yoon out, he told Misaka Mikoto that Ji Yu-yoon was his sword mistress, the Duyu. Misaka Mikoto and Liuyan Ling parted ways after spending less than 2 hours with each other. They only talked about the creator's godhead and never talked about Ji Yu-yoon and Gu-han's sword mistress. Therefore, Misaka Mikoto was completely clueless about Gu-han's actual situation. Naturally, she believed that Ji Yu-yoon was Gu-han's sword mistress. It seemed like that was enough. As long as Misaka Mikoto hid the heavenly sword and let Misaka Mikoto think that the Duyu was Gu-han's sword mistress, everything would be fine. However, there was a huge problem. After Misaka Mikoto regained her strength, she would definitely return to Yuzhong City to fight Loki. At that time, it was inevitable that she would meet Liuyan Ling and the rest again. If they were to chat for a while and she revealed that Gu-han's sword mistress was the Duyu, everything would be exposed. Moreover, when Gu-han fought alongside them, should he use the Duyu or the heavenly sword? These were all problems that could not be solved. Gu-han had to come up with a perfect plan, a perfect explanation that would not be exposed. Therefore, the most important deception in Gu-han's life began. Gu-han purposely revealed the heavenly sword to make Misaka Mikoto doubt him. Everyone knew what happened next. Under Gu-han's deception, Misaka Mikoto successfully accepted the complicated setup. She agreed to help Liuyan Ling and the rest to cover up Gu-han's lie. It was a perfect plan. Ji Yu-yoon, who had been working hard to cooperate with her brother, secretly gave her brother a thumbs up for his intelligence. On the other hand, when Gu-han had completed his deception plan, Qingpin had successfully killed the last normal zombie. A large dimensional vortex appeared in the sky and all the zombies were sucked into it. This was another characteristic of the dimensional vortex. If the dead Yuan Ku had come to the real world from the same dimension, there would not be a single dimensional vortex. Instead, a large dimensional vortex would appear and absorb all the Yuan Ku from the same dimension. There was an advantage to this. It saved Qing Pin the trouble of having to absorb the sword essence from one dimensional vortex at a time. The dimensional vortices would disappear after a short while. Based on the speed at which Qing Pin killed Yuan Ku, she would only be able to absorb a few dimensional vortices. The rest would be wasted. Now, Qing Pin only needed to absorb the sword essence from a large dimensional vortex. Guhan did not know whether to laugh or cry when he saw that Qing Pin had forgotten to absorb the sword essence from the dimensional vortex. If it were not for Guhan's reminder to Qing Pin, the 100 or so Yuan Ku's sword essence would have been wasted. One should not underestimate these sword essences. The sword essences of 100 mouse-level Yuan Ku added together would be around 200 to 300 quarks. All right, Qing Pin, Ms. Misaka, let's catch. Guhan said as he picked up Qing Pin. However, as soon as Qing Pin touched Guhan, he felt that something was wrong. What's going on? Why was Qing Qiu in Ji Yuhan's hand so naked, as if he wasn't wearing any clothes? Ji Yuhan lowered his head to take a look. Goodness gracious, Qing Pauper had unknowingly taken off all his clothes. He had even taken off his underwear. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.